The girl pointed to her rib cage. She told Shion that she loved him with all her heart. The girl put her hands together in a lock. She asked Zion that if he was okay with it, if they could date. The young one stood in a field of flowers. There was a mask on the young man's face. In the distance, mountains could be seen. The full moon illuminated everything around with its light. The young man addressed the girl by name. He answered Emily to take her time. The girl clasped her hands together and tried to object. Zion told Emily that he was thinking of her. The young man grabbed the girl by the shoulders. Shion continued that he thought of her as his important companion. The young man added that he couldn't have dated her with those feelings. Emily grew sad. She asked that she was unattractive to him. Zion let the girl go. He replied that it wasn't true. The hero said that she was beautiful just the way she was. Emily rejoiced. The girl asked that then she could have been given more time to think things over. Emily turned around and was about to leave. The girl continued that she hoped he could give her an answer after they defeated the demon lord. She ran off. Shion stared after her for a long time. Shion thought he almost lost his temper. He sat down in the lotus position. The hero was about to take off his mask. Shion took off his mask. He asked himself what to do now. Hero couldn't believe what Emily had just confessed to him. And after all, other girls had recently confessed their feelings to him as well. The tall girl covered her chest with her hand. She said, addressing Emily and Luna, that she was sorry, but she couldn't hide her feelings anymore. The girl asked Shion if he was okay with dating her. Another time, Luna approached Shion. The girl was embarrassed. She said that she knew they were in the middle of their journey, but she couldn't help but fall in love with him. The girl held her magic staff in her hands. His companions, Lamia and Luna, also confessed their feelings to him. Shion hesitated for a moment. He was lying on the grass. The young man thought it was unpleasant. Now he had 3 sentences to consider. Shion exhaled a breath. He quickly sat up, grabbed his face with his hands and started shaking his head. The hero mentally told himself no. He figured he wasn't supposed to be smug. But 3 girls confessed their love to him. The young man thought it was natural that he would be overjoyed. Shion lay down again. He looked up at the night sky. A faint wind swirled the flower petals in the air. There were 16 heroes in this world. They were divided into heroes of the elements and holy heroes. On the crest were swords that crossed over, covering the magic staff. On the right and left, the elements of the sun and the drop were visible. Elemental heroes possessed a specific element, such as fire or light. Others gained special abilities such as the divine eye or the speed of a god. The hero's name was Shion Axe. He was an element hero. It had been 13 years since he had become a hero of darkness. Shion's team stood in front of a huge monster. The monster was like a huge slime with many eyes. Its tentacles were stretching in different directions. The friends were ready to fight. Shion shouted it was getting closer. The monster put out its tentacles and was about to attack. They were able to dodge the monster's attack. Liquid dripped from the tentacles. The grass that the monster hit withered. Shion screamed it was poisonous slime. Luna shouted to Shion to leave the monster on her. She thrust her staff forward. The girl added that if it was poisonous slime, the fire should have worked. Fire began to appear on the end of her staff. Luna cast the fireball spell. Fireballs began to appear from her staff non-stop. The fireballs reached the monster. The fire took over the monster's body but quickly extinguished. Luna was puzzled. She asked that the fire was nothing to the monster. The monster was about to attack again. Luna wanted to try a different element. She put the staff in front of her. The girl cast the spell Wind Blade. Air blades started to appear from the staff. They flew towards the monster. The blades just bounced off the monster's body. Luna asked as he managed to reflect the wind as well. Luna squeezed the staff harder. She said then, this time she had to attack at full strength. The girl used the water spear spell. Sharp water spikes resembling spears appeared in the air. They flew at the monster, but didn't even hit it. Luna began to feel nervous. Luna was breathing heavily. She looked at the monster. The girl asked why her magic wasn't working at all. Lamia told Luna to move away. Luna looked at her. Lamia added that she would do it herself. Lamia was wearing short shorts. Lamia raised her sword above her head. She said the poisonous slime was weak against fire, water, and lightning. Sparks appeared around the girl. She continued that she was especially vulnerable to lightning. Lamia added that, in other words, it wouldn't do much good if they didn't have the lightning element. She held her sword out in front of her. The girl struck the monster. Luna told Lamia that it wasn't fair. She added that Lamia just wanted to show off in front of Zion. Lamia soared over the monster. With one blow, the girl sliced the monster in half. The monster's body was cut into 2 pieces. They fell to the ground. Lamia looked at the monster and then raised her head and exhaled. Lamia asked Luna if she had any comments. Luna snorted unhappily. Shion remained silent. Emily said she did. Behind Lamia, something began to gurgle. The girl turned around and froze in horror. Luna shouted that she should have been more careful. She rushed to Lamia and pushed her away from the impact. The girls fell to the ground. The first to regain consciousness was Lamia. She carefully lifted Luna up. Luna grabbed her shoulder. Lamia shook her. She saw the wound. Lamia said it was poison. The monster was heading towards them. There were now 2 monsters. The girls were terrified. Lamia said that it couldn't be. Luna asked that her weakness was the ground. Shion and Emily ran over to them. Shion shouted, asking if they were okay. Emily examined Luna's wound. She said they had to get the poison out quickly. The girl apologized for the fact that they would have to retreat. A snow-white wolf appeared. Shion stood in their defense. He answered in the negative. The hero said he could handle himself next. Emily tried to object. Luna said the poison slime's weakness was the ground, and Shion's dark magic simply wouldn't work. Shion stretched his arm forward. He applied the spell Sphere of Darkness. A magical sphere appeared in the hero's hand. Shion told the darkness to release its power. The dark sphere began to change. Everything around it began to crumble. The ground began to move, surrounding the monsters. Columns appeared out of the ground. Shion clenched his hands, ordering the earth blocks to slam shut. The blocks slammed shut, and the monster remained between them. Sand began to fall, forming a dusty mist. Luna said it was amazing. Lamia said it was as expected from Shion. Emily squeezed her fingers into a lock. She told Shion that he was amazing, as always. Zion turned around. He replied that he was just lucky. The hero continued that they needed to keep working even harder as a foursome. A horse-drawn cart passed along the road. There were fields nearby. Trees rarely grew. There were also people passing along the road. The team hid from the sun under a tree. Lamia said that even though they were on the same team, Zion was so strong that they had nothing to do. Emily sat on the tree. Luna sat on the grass. Lamia leaned on the rocks, and Zion just stood. Lamia went on to say that her magic and swordsmanship was nothing compared to Zion's. The girl added that she had never once helped him in battles. Emily said she had only used healing magic once, and that was just a scratch. She was upset. All 3 of them were sad. Shion tried to calm them down. He said that the 3 of them had helped him fight for a long time. Shion continued that the point was not the battles themselves, but the fact that they supported him. He added that time, when it was too late to save people, one of the victims accused him of having a demon kill his father. The hero said the girls protected him then. The girls covered him with themselves. Shion continued that if they weren't with him, he would have stopped being a hero long ago. The hero asked the girls not to make those faces again. Luna was the first to apologize. She said she was just a little nervous. She was joined by Lamia. The girl said she was going to practice more to show her worth. Emily agreed with them. She suggested that they go through it all together. The mood of all 3 of them lifted. Zion thanked the girls. He said that now was the time to continue their journey. Since they had met 3 years ago, the girls had become his loyal companions. The hero believed that he could overcome any difficulties with them. The girls were happy. Luna asked if they could split up now. Luna told Shion to come to the inn of a neighboring village in the evening. Shion asked that he had to go alone. Lamia grabbed Shion's hand with her hands. The girl apologized. Lamia continued that it was because they needed to prepare something. Emily exclaimed that it was for something important. She added that it was for his birthday. Shion remembered that today was also his birthday. Zion asked himself that the party would be the same as last year. The hero remembered last year's birthday. Shion smiled, but it couldn't be seen because of the mask. Shion replied that he would go then and kill some time. Luna exclaimed for him to look forward to tonight. The girl continued that there was no need to eat anything in advance yet. Emily said that they would see each other later. The girls were about to leave, but Zion called out to them. Shion said that there was something he had forgotten to tell them. He took the mask off his face. The hero continued that his dream was to erase the sadness from this world. The young man thanked his companions for not laughing at such a silly dream. Shion bowed to the girls. He also thanked the girls for always following him. Shion looked at his companions. Emily was crying. Luna wasn't looking at him, but it was obvious she was angry. Lamia was annoyed. Shion was perplexed. Shion apologized again. He wondered if he had said something wrong. Emily wiped her tears. She answered in the negative. The girl added that she just got something in her eye. They turned around and were about to leave. Luna said they would see each other later. Shion exhaled. Shion looked at them, following them. The hero said he thought it was too much. The young man exhaled heavily. He put the mask on. Shion told himself that he had until tonight. He stretched his arms and headed towards the village. There were many people along the road. The hero asked himself what he should do until then. Shion said that this was it. His feast was to be held in the evening. He clapped one palm against the other. The hero added that this was why he couldn't leave all the cooking to them. Zion ran on. Hero told himself that tonight was his 25th birthday. He ordered himself, stop worrying so much and pull himself together. Shion made it to the forest. He thought to himself, here he came to this place. The hero leaned against the trunk of a tree. Shion told himself that he would be late if he didn't get back soon. His attention. There were other heroes here trying to destroy the monster. The ground was cracked everywhere, which spoke of the monster's strength. The monster was holding a huge bat in its hands. The monster squealed and rushed into battle. It swung its bat and struck the warriors. The adventurers flew off in different directions. The adventurers screamed in pain. The girl was hiccuping with fear. She held her staff in her hands. All of them were badly frightened. Shion realized that from the looks of it, they couldn't resist the goblin's superhuman strength and also didn't work well with the mage. The hero figured they would be defeated fairly quickly. Shion was standing on the high ground behind the adventurers. The hero asked one of them if they needed help. The fellow turned around. He said he didn't know who he was, but asked to help them out. The guy added that the monster was too strong. The monster was going to attack again. Shion drew his sword. He replied that he understood. The hero flew up into the sky and headed towards the monster. Shion attacked the monster. He flew through and landed behind the monster. The hero put his sword back in its scabbard. The monster screamed in pain. Shion chopped the monster into pieces. All those body parts of the monster flew apart. The adventurer team was shocked. The blonde-haired man said that he chopped the goblin into pieces with one swing of his sword. Shion slung his sword on his shoulder. The team was still reeling from the shock. Shion said then he was off. The hero said goodbye to them. The team didn't understand anything. Their leader told Shion to wait. He added that they had not yet had time to thank their savior. Shion turned around and approached the leader. They were face to face. The leader started to get nervous. The team leader asked that, was he really an Axe-sama? He continued that this mask, black as tar clothes and a beautiful voice. The guy shouted that it was definitely him. Shion fell silent. Afterward he said it was really him. The guy said that they were his big fans. The adventurers rejoiced. He continued that they never dreamed of ever meeting him. Guy added that they were honored that a great man like him had helped them. Shion replied that he was glad they were all right. The adventurer grabbed his arms. Shion stood in front of the door of the inn. He asked himself why he was so nervous. The hero thought it was just his birthday. The door was opened by a maid. The girl was quite friendly. She told him to come in kindly. The girl asked that he was an Axe-sama. The maid said that the place was reserved especially for him. The girl continued that Miss Emily and her friends were to be here soon. She motioned for him to come through and take a seat. Zion walked through and sat down. The table was for 4 people. The young man looked around. Shion took off his mask and placed it on the table. He was very nervous. The hero was wondering where the 3 of them were now. Shion took off his gloves and also put them on the table. He wore rings on his index and middle fingers. The clomping of heels was heard. It was Zion's companions. The girls had dressed up. Lamia called out to him. Luna apologized for keeping him waiting. The girls were in high spirits. Shion blushed and smiled. He turned around in his chair. The hero exclaimed that the 3 of them looked lovely. Emily replied that they were glad he liked it. Luna walked over and took his cheek. She told Zion that he was the center of attention today. The girl put her index finger to her lips. Lamia wished him a happy birthday. She continued that his gift from Luna and her was a sword scabbard and a mask. The girl held the gift in her hands. Lamia asked that wasn't the one he used pretty old. Emily held out the gloves. The girl said that her gift was these gloves right here. She continued that she had knitted them herself. Emily added that she hoped it would make them more comfortable. Zion took his gifts. He thanked his companions. The hero said that he was going to take care of them all. Luna asked Emily where she found the time to tie them up. The girl looked at Emily with a thoughtful look. She added that idling in their situation was inexcusable. Emily blushed and asked not to be spoken to like that. Shion's tears poured onto the seals. Zion was crying. He tried to wipe his tears with his hand. Luna asked Shion why he was crying. The hero replied that he wasn't crying. Lamia laughed. She walked right up to Shion and grabbed his cheeks. The young man blushed with embarrassment. Lamia said that he was very cute. The girl added that she would have eaten him like that. Lamia gave Zion a hug. She said that, however, it wasn't appropriate for his birthday. The girl touched Shion's sword. She asked her to give it to her. Zion pulled the sword from his back and held it out to Lamia. The girl took it and thanked him. Shion was approached by Emily. She took his hand. The girl asked Shion if he didn't mind taking off those rings. The hero was uncomfortable. Emily brought her other hand to Shion's hand. Emily brought Shion's hand up to her forms. She continued by saying that he needed to take off the hero-proof ring for his birthday. The girl offered to take that ring off, at least for a little while. Shion asked Emily, holding them up in that case. Emily was smiling. Shion was embarrassed. Luna came up behind him. She said that the earrings should have been taken off, too. Shion asked his earrings with protection against magic. The hero was surprised. Shion took off his earrings and held them out to Emily. He said he took them off. Luna said they had a surprise for him. She asked Shion if he could close his eyes. The girls smiled at him. Lamia held Zion's sword to her. Shion asked himself that it was a surprise. The hero said that it reminded him that last year he had opened his eyes a little bit. He added that this time he would try to close them completely. Shion closed his eyes. Shion wondered what was happening to him. The hero asked himself that his power was leaving him. He opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the girls were attacking him. Shion asked them what they were doing. The hero was terrified. Zion was tied to a chair. Lightning bolts were shot at him. The hero was in pain. He remembered his earrings that he had given to Luna. Zion tried to free himself. Someone laughed. The stranger exclaimed that he was finally caught. He said he didn't realize it would take so long. The moon shot lightning bolts from her staff at Zion. Shion recognized the fire hero and the stranger. Along with them were the wind hero and the earth hero. The hero asked himself why they were here. He couldn't believe what was happening. The fire hero said he would answer why they were here. He smirked. They were standing in front of the bound Zion. The fire hero said that it was a great plan that took 3 years. They looked at the young man with disdain. The wind hero said that was correct. She continued that they had banded together to get rid of him. She brought her hand up to her face and rested her chin on it. The earth hero said that the comrades he trusted, they all worked for them. He placed his hands on his hips. Shion's eyes widened in surprise. He shouted that this couldn't be happening. Lamia, Luna, and Emily pointed their staffs at him. The girls used magic to shackle Shion. Shion was already speaking uncertainly. He told the heroes that they had lied to him. The young man looked at his former companions. They took their gazes away from him. It was obvious that the girls regretted their act. The heroes laughed evilly. The fire hero told Shion that he was so naive. He added that that was the reason their plan had worked. Shion asked why they were doing this. He closed one eye in pain. The fire hero turned serious. He replied that it was because no one could overpower him in brute force. The fire hero added that even the demon king was scared and laid low. The wind hero said she agreed that she was jealous of him. She walked over to Zion. The wind hero continued that he was not only the strongest but also the most famous hero. The earth hero said that the strongest hero of the element was Axe, so many would say. He continued that also heroes with divine power who looked down on them considered him an exception. Shion's eyes widened in horror and pain. The fire hero said that the chatter was enough. He pulled out a stone. He continued that he needed to take its magical power faster. The fire hero became somber. The fire hero continued, saying that since it was them, they needed to work together. He told Shion that he didn't need to hold a grudge against them. The heroes stood behind Zion. They brought the stones up to the young man's back. The heroes activated their stones. Zion sat there not knowing what to do. A ball of darkness appeared around Zion. He screamed in pain. The hero's stones shattered to pieces. The fire hero said that with that, his 90% of his magic power was gone. He turned to the wind hero, telling her to take care of the rest. The fire hero gave her the rest of the stone. The wind hero looked at the closed door. The wind hero walked out into the courtyard. It was already night. She raised her palms and the remains of the stones were carried away by the wind. The wind heroine said that she would use the wind to scatter them all over the world. The wind heroine walked back inside. The fire heroine stood in front of Zion. The wind hero asked why don't he try to collect all the shards. The earth hero once again directed magic at Shion. The earth hero said that now, so that he can't get any closer to the heroes or the demon king anymore, they will teleport him to the dark forests. The earth hero's wand was pointed at Shion. Shion looked at his former companions. He clenched his teeth. Shion asked Luna that all the things she said when he was depressed were lies. Luna averted her gaze and remained silent. Shion told Lamia that she was laughing happily when they were practicing fencing. After all, he asked if that meant she was just pretending. Lamia changed her face and was silent as well. The young man asked Emily that she always said they had a bond. But did she ever really think that? The girl closed her eyes. She was silent as well. Shion shouted. He asked to be answered. The shackles that bound the young man broke. The power that freed Shion spread throughout the room. The hero of fire asked what already. He asked what they were that had exhausted him. The wind hero said that things were bad, so they needed to teleport him quickly. The earth hero hesitantly said she would do it now. Shion reached out to Luna. He asked the girl for her to answer him. Luna replied that she was just following orders. She added that was why she was doing what she was doing. Shion turned to Lamia and called out to her. Lamia replied that she too was only doing what her mother superior ordered her to do. Shion held out his hand to Emily. The girl crossed her arms in front of her. Emily said she was sorry, but she was just following orders. Shion froze. He realized that this meant that it was all true. The young man thought that even if you tried your best, even if you found something irreplaceable, it would all slip away so easily. The fire hero grabbed the hand of the earth hero. He shouted that it had to be done now. The earth hero screamed that he would kill them. The earth hero pointed his wand at Shion. He cast a banishment spell. Shion was surrounded by a sphere. The young man began to disappear. Shion thought that his life would always be like this. He disappeared from the establishment where his birthday party was to be held. Shion lay in the middle of the forest. Birds were flying over the forest. He realized that he had never had any comrades and it was all an illusion. The young man was pained by the realization of reality. Shion sat up. He thought that their love had never happened and he had trusted them. The young man remembered his joyful companions. Shion bent down to the ground. He thought he believed in them, believed in all of this. The hero cried out in despair. Afterward, he began to cry openly. Zion teleported next to the cave. He thought that there was no sword or equipment, and he was deprived of magic power. The young man stood up. Shion thought that if this was indeed a dark forest, in which case it would be. The young man didn't have time to finish his thought. A rustling sound was heard. He looked around. The monster was nearby. The huge monster roared. It was about to attack Shion. Shion thought it was a tall ogre. He used the black wings spreading spell. The wings appeared on its back. The feathers that came off the wings were aimed at the monster. They pierced the monster, leaving holes in it. Shion put his wings away and just stood there. The monster was destroyed. The hero knew that such an opponent was no good. Shion thought that ending his life as a hero at the hands of such an inept monster was just pathetic. Shion continued on his way. It began to rain. Something caught the young man's attention. He asked himself what it was. Shion thought he was shivering. He looked ahead. In front of him was a white fox. Shion continued to stare at the animal. He told himself to stay calm. Shion thought it was a beautiful creature, and his mind was even visible in the pose. The young man tried to continue, but he walked very sluggishly. Shion looked at the animal. He asked the animal that it understood him. The fox answered positively. Shion said that it had good pronunciation. The fox continued that it was playing with the people who entered this forest. Shion asked that she was going to eat him. The fox replied in the negative. She added that she was not going to do that. The animal began to wag its tail. The young man did not take his eyes off the fox. The raindrops no longer fell to the ground, but floated in the air. Shion opened his mouth in amazement. Zion asked the fox if she could have killed him. The fox interjected that she could have killed him. It was a fateful meeting between the strongest hero and the white fox. Zion thought that he could never forget that day. It was his 8th birthday. The horse fell and the wagon overturned. The boy fell and smashed his eyebrow. He was in pain. A man was hung by a tree. There were many swords in his body. Flames were burning nearby. The brigand was holding a dead girl by the hair. A murdered woman lay nearby. The bandits pointed their bloody swords at little Zion. The bandits killed and robbed everyone around them. They were all smiling. One of them headed for the boy. The bandit raised his sword to kill the boy. A red liquid splashed on the boy's face. The heads of all the bandits were cut off. Red liquid squirted from the robbers' necks. They were killed by a stranger. He held swords in both hands. The savior said that it was very cruel. He continued that there was only one survivor left. The stranger held out his hand to the boy. The savior had rings on his index and middle fingers. He said that it had already passed. The boy was still scared. Then the bandits killed his parents and sister. The hero of darkness saved him. Then little Zion went to apprentice to the hero of darkness and became a hero himself at the age of 12. From that moment, he had both good and bad memories. After Shion met the 3 of them and he finally believed that he had found true happiness. The hero remembered their first meeting. Shion thought that happiness had always slipped out of his hands. Raindrops ran down his face. The hero thought that if there was such a thing as fate, he certainly wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Zion reached out his hand toward the fox. The young man stretched his hands forward. He asked the fox if he would be able to kill him. The fox asked him if he could kill him. The strangers looked at each other, rounding their eyes. Zion asked the fox that he had just told him to kill him. The fox replied in the affirmative. The fox continued that he had too. Shion interrupted him. The hero said that he wanted the same thing. Fox smiled. He said it was such a coincidence. Shion laughed. Fox was embarrassed. He asked what was so funny about it. Shion thought that the fox's speech was very much like the ramblings of an old man fixated on the past. The hero answered in the negative. He apologized to the fox. Shion continued that, for some reason, he looked like a human. He added that, also, he was smart. The fox remained silent and waved his tail. The fox replied to Zion that he was too kind. He continued that he was just a fox. Shion examined the fox. Big tail, fluffy fur and soft front paws, twitching ears. Shion thought the fox's appearance was very soothing. The hero said he would like to talk to him. He asked the fox if he was allowed to. The fox replied that he wanted to as well. The fox continued that he had to let him burn it before he could. His eyes became predatory. The monster that was behind Shion was burning from the fox's fire. Shion was surprised. The monster was burning. It was screaming in pain. Zion turned around. He said he didn't see it because he was distracted. The fox said it was a Chibolin, and they were skilled at stealthy attacks from the back. Shion looked at the burning monster. He repeated the name of the monster's species. The fox wagged his tail. He told Zion to follow him. The fox continued that they needed to go somewhere quieter. The creature added that he would guide him. Shion obeyed. They reached a quiet place. Shion sat down on a stump and the fox sat down in front of him. He said that his name was Hakuko. The fox continued that he could have called him Haku. He said that he identified himself as a male individual. Shion introduced himself as well. He said that he assumed that he was now a former hero. The fox replied that he understood him. He closed his eyes. The fox continued that he didn't know much about humans because he had only lived for over 300 years. Fox touched his mane with his paw. He asked if he could tell his life story. Shion nodded. The hero replied that he would like to hear it. The fox began to tell that he lived with his family. He said that they had settled in this forest. Fox continued that things used to be peaceful, but a while later his parents died. He said that then his friend died, even his child died. Fox continued that eventually his grandson died as well. Shion asked that they were killed by monsters. Fox shook his head negatively. He said that it was the natural course of events. He added that he was a variant. Shion knew that the werevants were mutated monsters. He figured that the fox had gained tremendous power, so his lifespan was greatly increased. The hero asked himself that he had been living all this time alone. Shion thought that he had endured all this while he lost his loved ones one by one. He began to feel uneasy. The fox continued by saying that the average lifespan of a demon fox was about 50 years, but he was alive and well after 300 years of life. He touched the flower he was sitting next to with his paw. The fox said he didn't want to be alone anymore and see someone close to him die. Something caught his attention. It was Zion, who was crying. Fox asked him why he was crying. Zion was sobbing. He tried to say that he wasn't crying. Fox replied that his tears were pouring out like that. He asked that he wasn't crying too hard. Shion said it was sweat. His tears were falling on his hands folded in his lap. The fox said he hadn't heard of anyone being talked out of it like that. Zion told the fox that he understood him. He continued that he too had lost family, those he loved. The fox closed his eyes. He exhaled. Haku said that now he would like to hear Shion's story. Shion asked where he should have started. A puddle of Shion's tears formed on the ground. Fox began to cry as well. He said that Zion's life had been so sad since he was a child. Shion asked the fox what was the saddest part of his life. The fox answered, sobbing, that his grandfather, who lived next door and was like him, had died. He cried. Shion said he understood him. Fox wiped his tears away with his paw. He said that it must have been very painful to be betrayed. Fox continued that those heroes were terrible. He looked at Shion. Haku asked that he wasn't going to get revenge. Shion closed his eyes and lowered his head. He replied that everything was fine. The hero said that he had lost the will to live. Shion got up from the stump. The fox stood up on his hind legs as well. He asked that since it was like this, then maybe we should have died together. Haku turned serious in a second. Shion replied that if he was okay with it. Fox replied that of course he was okay with that. He said that it was better to die with someone than alone. Haku smiled and added that even though he wasn't human, the fox started laughing. Shion started laughing as well. He said that this laughter was very strange. The fox became serious again. He growled, asking that, then, they were about to die. Shion summoned the feathers, and after that the black winged sword. The sword was huge, but the hero held it in his hand without difficulty. Shion replied in a cold tone that he was always ready. Haku looked at him with a menacing look. Shion never thought he would die this way, and, until recently, he couldn't even imagine such a thing. Feathers hovered around the young man. Shion thought that this, it turns out, wasn't so bad. He grabbed his sword with both hands, preparing to attack. The fox growled. He, too, was ready to fight. Shion attacked the fox. Haku stretched forward with his paw, from which his long and sharp claws protruded. Haku was eating fried sausages. He was hungry. Shion looked at him sadly. The hero said his need for food was astounding. There were a few more skewers of meat hanging on the fire. Haku happily continued to gulp down the food prepared for him. The fox apologized. He said that maybe he didn't look like it, but he had been eating quite a bit. Shion replied in the negative. The hero held out another skewer of meat to hack. He said, talking about the size of what he was eating. The fox carefully took a piece of meat. Fox asked what he meant to say, that he was fat even though he had a lean body. Food began to fall out of his mouth. Zion replied that meat was falling out of his mouth. The fox said that it was because Shion said something strange. Shion asked himself how it happened. He grabbed another stick and bit off a piece of meat. He remembered that when they were already swinging at each other with the intent to kill, the opponents had eyes eager for victory. At that moment, the opponents' stomachs began to rumble. Both Shion and Haku fell to the ground from hunger. Haku asked why don't they eat before they die. The fox was overjoyed. Shion didn't think hunger could stop such a serious intention. They continued to eat. Haku waved his tail from side to side. Haku said he didn't really like raw meat, so he roasted it. The fox licked his face. He burped and then apologized afterward. Shion sat on a stump. He replied that this meant that white foxes could burp too. The hero added that this world was full of things he didn't know about. Haku said he was confused. The sticks were finishing up. Haku touched Shion's shoulder with his paw. The fox asked Shion that didn't he have more to do in this life. He said that he had lived too long, but he was different. Fox asked that he was right. Shion replied that it wasn't a big deal. Haku asked that it was true. He went on to ask that there wasn't someone he wanted to meet or apologize to. Shin said someone he wanted to apologize to. The hero had a change in his face. This change was noticed by Haku. He rejoiced. The fox exclaimed that this meant there was someone after all. Haku began to circle around Shion. He said that they had to meet him. The fox added that he could die after doing so. Shion tried to object, but the fox wouldn't let him say anything. He stretched his muzzle under Shion's arm. Haku sat down next to him. He said they had to go. The fox asked Shion to climb on top of him. The hero was surprised. Haku pointed his tail to his back. Shion smiled. Shion obeyed Haku. He climbed on top of the fox. Hero apologized for the inconvenience. The fox climbed up. Shion was scared at first. Afterward, he said it was so high. Haku asked Shion where the person he wanted to apologize to was. Shion replied that the person was in the village of Kuru. The young man added that this village was in the same region as this forest. The fox said that he knew the place. He continued that they were indebted to him in the past. Haku headed towards the village. The fox ran with great speed. Shion wasn't expecting this. A blinding light appeared ahead of the two of them. Shion tried to cover his eyes with his hand. He told himself that maybe this was fate. Shion thought meeting Haku, teleporting by chance here, maybe she was telling him to visit her grave. The fox didn't stop. The sun showed on the horizon. The companions arrived at the village. Shion told Hack that he was sorry he had to run for 3 days in a row. The fox replied in the negative. He looked around. Haku added at the end that the place hadn't changed a bit. Shion asked the fox to tell him how he was connected to this village. Haku said that he had stopped here by chance some time ago. He continued that he then helped this village when it was attacked by an ogre. The fox smiled. He added that he didn't think there were any humans left from that time. Shion smiled as well. The companions were silent for a while. One of the villagers who was passing nearby noticed them. The villager ran towards them. He shouted, asking that the young man was Master Axe. Shion turned around. He greeted the boy. Shion said that it had been a long time. The residents started shouting, calling out for people. He shouted that Master Axe was back here. People started coming out of their houses. One woman asked if it was true. Teenagers also came running to the place where the resident's voice was coming from. The people gathered around Zion. Someone asked if it was really Master Axe. Another resident said that they had been waiting for him all this time. A third exclaimed that they were very happy to see him. The fox enjoyed the sight. Shion was uncomfortable with what was happening. The village elder came out to Zion. The grandfather thanked Zion for coming. He added that they had been waiting for him. Zion approached the elder. He said that it had really been a long time. Zion felt sad. Shion lowered his eyes. The hero asked that Lin was here. The elder replied that Lin wasn't here right now. He said that he thought she should have returned soon. Shion clenched his hand into a fist. The hero said that he had other business to attend to first. The companions went to the cemetery. Shion took the flowers with him. Fox cheered as Haku told Shion that he was quite popular. The fox added that they had completely ignored the rare fox monster. Shion replied that once upon a time, he took care of everyone here. The young man became sad. The fox, seeing this, also became sad. They approached the grave. Shion placed the flowers he had brought on it. Shion looked at the grave with regret. He said that she was one of the people he loved. The hero added that she died because of him. The fox sat on his hind paws and put his front paws forward and folded them together. He said that his name was Haku. The fox added that he was a friend of Shion's. The young man followed his example and folded his arms as well. At first, Shion was silent. He closed his eyes and said Mary's name. Something popped into Shion's head. The young man didn't expect this. He turned around and saw a potato that flew off his head. He looked over and saw a girl. The girl asked what he was doing here. She was holding another potato in her hands. The girl was very angry. Shion recognized the girl as Lin. Shion smiled guiltily. He said that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. An indignant Lin replied that he had said he would never come back here again. Zion quietly apologized. Lin continued that if he was visiting the grave, he was done. The girl threw a potato at him. She yelled that Zion should have gotten out of here. The hero tried to shield himself from Lin's attacks. The fox turned his head. The villagers approached. The elder insulted Lin. The elder added that how could she say such a thing. Grandfather continued that what happened to Mary was not Master Axe's fault. He continued that, on the contrary, many of the villagers were saved thanks to Master Axe. The elder ordered Lin to apologize. The girl felt uncomfortable. Lin asked why. She said it was like everything was her fault. The girl was frowning. She yelled that she had had enough. Lin turned around and ran. The elder tried to stop her. The frustrated elder walked over to Zion. He asked the hero to forgive Lin. Grandfather added that he asked for forgiveness on Lin's behalf. Xion lowered his head. He asked the elder not to do that. The young man explained that it was natural for Lin to treat him that way. Xion continued that he wouldn't want them to treat her so cruelly. Fox looked at the abandoned potatoes. The hero apologized. He asked that they couldn't leave him alone for a while. Xion was left alone. He looked at the grave. The young man spoke to Marie. He said that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. Zion continued that a lot had happened since then. The hero added that he had quit, decided to stop being a hero. An image of Marie appeared in Zion's mind. The image told Zion to good riddance. The girl continued that she was glad he was back. Zion got down on one knee and took Marie's hand. He asked her if she would marry him. The girl was embarrassed. The hero added that he would like to live with her forever in this village. The girl smiled and let him put the ring on her finger. The lovers' fingers were intertwined. Xion remembered that then the village was attacked by a wyvern. Everything around it was engulfed in flames. He remembered that the monster had been spotted in the neighborhood a long time ago. The villagers had worried a lot then, but Xion couldn't do anything about it. The coffin that contained Marie's body stood in the room. The man said that while Master Axe was away, the wyvern attacked the village. He took off his hat. Lin was crying over her sister's coffin. A woman nearby tried to comfort her. The man continued that Marie had gotten caught in the fire while protecting a child who had fallen behind. Little Lin asked Xion why he hadn't come sooner. The little girl wouldn't stop crying. She grabbed at Xion's clothes. Lin screamed that if he had been here, her sister would be alive. She added that he had said he would protect her forever. Zion was confused. Lin shouted that Axe was a liar. Then Zion was horrified. He didn't know what to say to her. Xion stood in front of his lover's grave. He lowered his head and searched for an excuse for himself. The hero knocked on the door of one of the houses. The door was opened by Lin. The girl saw him and her look became evil. She asked how she could help. Xion said he just wanted to talk to her. The girl asked what he meant. Xion continued that he had stopped being a hero. He added that that was why if there was anything he could do for her. The girl said that she assumed it was as an atonement. The girl's eyes were filled with anger. She agreed. Lin crossed her arms over her chest. The girl told Xion to catch a golden snake for her. Xion interjected her. He hesitated for a moment. The young man said that, unless he was mistaken, it was a very rare breed of snake. Lin asked what had asked him to stay then. She explained that she had a bad feeling then, so she asked him not to leave. Lin continued, remembering all the events. She was interrupted by Zion. He apologized. The young man said that he was very sorry about it. Lin started to cry. The girl remained silent. Afterward, she said he might not have brought the snake. Lin slammed the door shut. She screamed that it would be better if it never appeared in front of him again. Lin stood leaning against the door. She looked at the table where her sister's engagement ring lay. Lin lowered her head and cried. She asked her sister what she should do. Haku walked over to Xion. The fox asked him if he was done. Xion replied that he was almost. Xion continued that he wanted to find a golden snake in the mountains. Haku asked that it was really important. Xion asked the fox if he wanted to go or if he wanted to stay. Haku exclaimed that he wanted to go. The fox said that actually talking to the elder took a lot of time and energy. He remembered the elders' stories about the village. The mountains showed themselves. Lies asked that they were on this mountain. Zion answered in the affirmative. He continued that if they were lucky, it would only take a few days. The hero added that if not, they would be sleeping in the open for a month. Haku asked that it was better than the dark forest. Shion replied that it wasn't really. Shion didn't expect her to forgive him. The hero lowered his head. He said mentally, addressing Lin, that he would definitely find the golden snake. Shion raised his head. His eyes were full of determination. Our chapter began with Shion Axe thinking that the golden snake is a golden-colored snake. The name speaks for itself. The only problem is that it is a very cautious animal. After all, this snake almost never shows itself, so they need to check almost every corner. The white fox replied that he understood the task. Shion Axe said that was great and suggested that they split up. Suddenly, as the guy started to leave, the white fox called out to him. The white fox handed the guy the gloves and said it would be much better with them. The guy looked at the gloves and said they were really good and then asked where the white fox got them from. The white fox said that the owner of a store in Karu village gave him the gloves. The shopkeeper refused to accept the money even though he wanted to pay. The owner said it was nothing compared to what the guy had done for them. The white fox smiled and said that the villagers seemed to like him a lot. Shion Axe replied that the people of this village were indeed incredibly kind people. The guy then put on those gloves. Shion Axe noticed that the white fox had found something and asked him about it. At that moment, the fox was looking at a small snake. It was the first day of the search. The white fox was cowering in the bushes while Shion Axe was digging through the grass. The white fox told Shion Axe that he had only found a tiger sting. The guy said to be careful with this snake, for if it bit him he would harass it. Udge hissed at the fox. Suddenly the Udge jumped up and bit the white fox right on the nose. Shion Axe started yelling that he had warned him that this snake was very poisonous. The white fox named Haku rolled his eyes after the snake bite and fell on his side, quietly saying that he was in a lot of pain. Shion Axe ran over to Hack and started stroking him. The fox said in a trembling voice that he was glad to meet such a good man. And then, completely losing his strength, the fox dropped his head to the ground and said goodbye to the guy. Shion was momentarily startled, and then made a displeased face, for he realized something. Shion realized that the fox was tricking him and asked if he should be patted for such classy acting. Haku said that would be glorious and then got to his feet. Shion Axe took offense to the fox, then the guy started apologizing. The guy asked him if it comes out that he is a mischievous animal. Haku replied that he got nostalgic about the time when they used to do that. Shion replied that was good, but don't forget about finding the snake. The white fox replied that he understood. The white fox sat in the grass for a long time, remembering the times when his beloved family was alive. It was very good for him then, and he will never forget those lived moments. At that moment a flock of birds flew over the forest. That was the end of the first day of the snake search. The second day of the snake search began. The tired boys were sitting near a thick tree. The white fox said that they still couldn't find this snake. Shion Axe replied that he never said that finding it would be easy. White fox told Shion Axe that he heard news about Lin and Marie, or rather the elder decided to tell him. The boy was interested in this information. The white fox said that if he asked him, it really wasn't his fault. Shion looked at the fox and thanked him sincerely. Suddenly the lad said that talking like this made him a little hungry, and at that very second the white fox rushed off into the distance, shouting that he had gone hunting. Shion remarked that the fox was incredibly fast. Several hours had passed since the white fox had gone hunting, and it had finally returned. The boy looked at the beast with tired eyes. However, he immediately gathered his strength and said that it was about time to roast it all. The white fox licked his lips eagerly at the snack. The beast was insanely pleased with himself that he was able to bring the prey. In front of Shion Axe lay more than 4 carcasses of different forest beasts. The guy asked the white fox if he had brought too much. The guy replied that his stomach was telling him to keep hunting, so that's how it was. The third day of searching for the snake had already begun. Haku asked the guy, since that was the case, should he repeat again what that golden snake looked like. Then he added that he hadn't been outside in a while, but it wasn't because he was old or anything. At this point, the guy was sitting in a tree and looking off into the distance. Suddenly the guy pointed his finger at a snake that was crawling on the ground among the tree roots and said that it was similar to the snake they were looking for. The white fox suggested that the one that was currently crawling could be sold dearly. Suddenly Shion Axe began to look closely at the snake. He said that it looked a bit like a rattlesnake, and its scales had a special dark yellow color. After a moment the guys realized that it was the golden snake they were looking for. Shion Axe jumped down from the tree and ran along with the white fox to get it. The guy ordered the white fox to come in from the right side. Haku immediately did as he said. However, it wasn't that simple. The snake started to fire at the fox, but thanks to his physical abilities, he remained unharmed. Haku shouted that that snake was more agile than he thought. Shion told the white fox that he would like to catch that snake alive, if at all possible, of course. Haku immediately thought of a way to help his comrade realize his wish. He decided to use one of his unusual skills. His wool became incredibly hard, and twisted into a cone-shaped spiral flew into the snake. A bunch of such wool arrows flew at the snake, and a couple of them still hit the twisted golden snake, and then it stopped crawling. The white fox revealed that he called his skill the wool needle. By changing the hardness of the wool, he could apply a sleep or paralysis effect when hitting a target. Shion approached the snake and said that it was just a great skill. Haku waved his fluffy tail contentedly. The guy gently took the snake by the tail. The guy looked at the snake's head and asked his shaggy friend if he had just used the soporific needles. Haku said yes, but got worried because the snake's eyes were open. Shion explained to him that snakes just don't have eyelids. The guy praised Haku and thanked him for his help. The white fox really liked the praise and wanted more good words from Shion. Suddenly the white fox was upset. After all, he had lived for 300 years. However, he never knew that snakes don't have eyelids. The guy reassured him, saying that it was completely unimportant. More impressive was that he could shoot fur like needles. Haku waved his fluffy tail contentedly and said that Lin would be more than satisfied when she saw the golden snake they were able to catch. Along the way, the white fox hesitated and still asked the guy why Lin wanted to catch a golden snake. The guy replied that she probably wanted the golden snake because it was a very rare monster. He meant that she would get a lot of money if she could sell it. Haku suddenly thought about it and said that he seemed to have completely forgotten the information regarding golden snakes. Shion said that he just hoped that the money he received would be enough for the first and last payback. Haku asked the guy not to say something so sad. Suddenly he pointed his ears and heard something wrong. Haku shouted that he heard the footsteps of 3 beasts, and they were approaching them at an incredible speed. The guy jumped on the back of a white fox and they rushed away. The 3 wolves flying at such speed raised dust all along the path. They were rapidly approaching Haku with Shion. The rabid-looking wolves were already close. Shion shouted that they had already caught up to them. Haku replied that most likely these beasts were targeting them. The wolves started attacking the guys, trying to grab onto anything with their toothy mouths. Shion was frantically worried, but Haku promised that he would handle everything and save them. Haku was able to chew through each wolf in a couple of moments and they were safe again. Shion said that as he expected from a white fox, he was incredibly strong. The same one replied that it was very easy. Shion said that he was strong and at the same time had a skill that allowed him to shoot wool. Haku replied that he was a fox with 1,000 riddles. Haku then said that he meant that like other beasts, he eventually has awesome claws and sharp fangs. The guy asked with interest if he can use fox fire whenever he wants. The beast replied that he only does it if his enemies are at a certain distance, especially since it's not too effective for some kinds of monsters. Haku then wanted to change the topic of conversation and said that they should get the golden snake to Lin as soon as possible anyway, because it must be waiting for them in the village by now. When the guys approached the village, they noticed that there was something wrong with it. Fire was blazing everywhere. Smoke covered the small wooden houses. The guy said they should hurry. The boys came to the villagers and asked the elder what happened to the village. The old man said that an hour ago a group of robbers suddenly attacked their village. Anxiety gripped the villagers and they did not know what to do. Shion noticed that there were injured people and asked the elder why they were not being helped by the guards they had hired. The elder said that they were trying to save the village, but the robbers had killed every guard. The leader of the bandits was so strong they couldn't imagine. The boy looked at the slumped elder and asked where Lin was. He hoped that the bandits hadn't stolen her. But it was all in vain. The old man said that she had indeed been taken, as well as the women and children. Shion asked where they had gone. The man replied that the robbers had gone south, and began to beg the lad for help. The lad stooped down to the dead villager and taking his sword apologized. Shion took the elder's trembling hands in his and said that he didn't need to be asked for help. Here in this village Mary was born, and of course he would do everything in his power to keep this place safe. The boy then approached the white fox and asked if he would help him. Haku raised his paw to the guy's hand and replied that he didn't even need to be asked, as he was always and anywhere ready to go with him. Haku winked at the guy and said that he was willing to go to hell with him. Shion nodded his head and hopped on the white fox. The boy shouted that he was going to help. Haku howled like a wolf and rushed off. On the road, Shion thought about the fact that such incidents might not be uncommon nowadays, But it wasn't the fault of any demon lord or monsters. Shion was sure that it was all the fault of evil, which could also reside in human hearts, especially in the conflict between people. For example, between nobles and peasants, such a conflict could make even heroes forcibly choose sides. Shion was insanely fed up with this world, once he witnessed his entire family being killed in the middle of their journey. This terrible picture he saw with his own eyes, and so he vowed that he would definitely change the world when he became a hero. However, it made him insanely angry that even after he became strong, there are things that he just can't change in any way, such as human greed that knows no bounds. Suddenly Haku shouted they caught up to the bandits. They were riding horses, some even had wagons. The boy grabbed onto the white fox tighter. Shion decided that even though he knew that the world couldn't be changed, he never said he would also throw away his flaming heart. Haku and Shion chased after what seemed like an entire army when the bandits noticed that they had a tail, and it was a monster tamer. They relayed this information to their leader. The leader ordered all of his regiments to come to a complete stop. The bandit regiment stopped and turned to face the monster tamer. As Shion got off, Haku estimated that they had about 13 men, and noted that their equipment was far too good for mere bandits. He looked closer at one of the wagons and saw many girls and children from that very village. Some of the girls were lying in the wagon beaten and bloody. Shion asked the bandit boss if he had allowed himself to beat the girls. The one replied that they simply had no choice, because those girls had resisted until the very end. They had just suffered so much because they had been leaning too long, and remarked that in any case, that beaten girl was still alive. Shion pulled out the sword he took from the dead guy and asked the bandit boss why they attacked the village. They didn't look like ordinary bandits at all after all, and asked who hired them to destroy the village. The boss said he didn't have to answer such questions to a stranger. The bandit boss laughed and said that Shion was a considerate enough guy and decided to tell as his final gift that they were members of a mercenary group and were ordered to take the women and children of the village. And that was the end of it. The boss raised his hand and ordered his subordinates to kill Haku. He called him a big dog. Haku was very angry that they thought he was just a big dog. He said they should remember that he was a white fox. He pushed the bandits aside with a single movement of his neck. Suddenly, one of the bandits ran up to Hack and poked him with a sharp sword. Shion asked the white fox if he was alright. The bandit felt that his sword had broken. Haku said that Shion shouldn't worry about him as his fur was too strong and wouldn't miss some wretched sword. Haku easily fought off all the bandits that ran at him. He shouted to Shion that it was okay to leave all those bugs on him. The bandit boss and Shion were left alone. The villain asked Axe if he knew why he ordered his subordinates to fight his big dog. The guy replied that he probably did it because Haku is stronger than him. The bandit boss replied that wasn't particularly true. In fact, he did it because they would get in the way underfoot. He added that he was most likely strong, however he would never beat him. Meanwhile, he was starting to activate magic. The bandit boss shouted that he had awesome powers that he once got from a hero, and launched a bunch of swords at Shion. Shion jumped from place to place to ensure that not a single sword hit him. The bandit boss mocked the guy, thinking he was just dancing. The guy managed to run away from every sword. Shion realized that the bandit boss could definitely have some definite strength. However, if his strength was only that level, even if it was obtained from a real hero, the guy continued to fight back with his sword. The monster boss jumped up and flew at the guy asking if he could afford to sink into his thoughts. Shion wondered if he could win. The monster boss jumped up and flew at the guy asking if he could afford to immerse himself in his thoughts. Shion was able to place his sword so that the bandit boss couldn't pierce him. The guy realized that this villain was strong enough. The guy made sharp movements and almost cut the neck of the bandit boss. However, he understood the guy's plan in advance and bowed his head a couple of centimeters. Shion was shocked. He thought he could see right through him. Then Shion decided to chop the villain in half, but he managed to react quickly and as if he had teleported to another place, and said that the guy really had great strength. The guy ran at the bandit boss again and they started fighting with their weapons. The villain thought he had the best mystic saber of destruction. He was sure that with such a mystical saber of destruction he could defeat absolutely any opponent. When he struck Shion sword with his saber, it was covered in cracks. The guy's sword simply crumbled into many pieces and disappeared. The bandit boss was sure that Shion had no chance of survival left and prepared to destroy him. The boss's saber almost caught up to the guy's head. But at that moment, Shion figured out how he could save himself. As the bandit boss blinked, Shion just vanished. He couldn't figure out where he went. Meanwhile, Zion began to appear from the ground behind the villain. Zion axe turned into a black liquid and finally disappeared from under the villain's saber, while the bandit boss stood there wondering where the guy had gone. The guy had already shown up to his chest from the ground. He was as inconspicuous as possible. As soon as Shion axe finally emerged from the ground, he shouted to the villain that he was caught and stabbed him with the hilt of his sword, which fell apart. Suddenly the guy had a very long sword again. However, it didn't help him. The villain was able to dodge the attack and strike. Shion axe was puzzled, as his new sword had crumbled again because of the bandit boss, and he noticed that his dodging in response to the attack was even faster than before. The guy assumed that the villain had a skill like seeing the future. Maybe he knows everything Shion axe does ahead of time. Shion axe asked him why he didn't feel his presence behind him if his previous skill was insight, just the ability to sense someone's presence. The guy then added that it wasn't just that. Perhaps he wasn't able to sense much. The bandit boss said that it was already dangerous and asked if that disappearing spell was dark magic. Shion axe nodded his head and said that it was. Shion axe said that he wanted to combine that with his claim and confidently mouthed that the foresight hero had granted him the ability to see into the future. After saying that, Shion assumed that his client was also a hero. The villain lowered his head and said that Shion was wrong, and then added that there was nothing he could do except reasoning. The villain laughed at Shion axe, for he is not even able to take his attacks, and besides, he doesn't have a sword. The guy looked at the bandit boss with a very angry look. Shion axe thought to himself that if it's only about the sword, then he has it. The guy started to read the spell again to use dark magic. The guy ordered the black liquid in his hands to appear in front of him and take the form of a sword, and after a moment the sword of dark vice appeared in his hands. Shion axe started swinging the sword to quickly get used to its features. The bandit boss said that all his actions were useless since he could see his every move anyway. Shion axe replied that it didn't matter at all anymore. After Shion axe swung his sword again, magic engulfed the villain's mind. His eyes lost their light and all he saw in front of him was darkness. The villain was frightened and wondered why it had gotten so dark so abruptly if it was still noon now. The villain told Shion axe that it looked like he had lost his vision, though his eyes were not damaged. The guy told him that originally, with one sword strike from would have lost all his senses. However, it seems he can only steal one sense, as it just happened now. The villain collapsed to his knees. Shion axe smiled and said that it was pointless to continue fighting and asked if it was time for him to surrender. The villain said he was ready to surrender and suddenly put his saber to his chest. Seeing this, Shion awed. The guy shouted to the villain not to do that, but it was too late. He stabbed himself with the saber, not wanting to surrender. He decided to kill himself. The villain's body collapsed to the ground. Shion axe was in shock and did not know what to do. The guy was worried that he might not be able to come to Haku's aid in time. But when they saw each other, the white fox was wagging his fluffy tail contentedly. Shion axe moved closer to the white fox and said that he had shown his best behavior as always. The boy looked at the girls in the wagon and went to help. He walked into the wagon and lifted the most injured girl into his arms. She mumbled his name exhaustedly. The boy said that she didn't have to say anything right now. He realized that her condition was extremely critical, so he decided to give her his last potion. He said he would use it because it was her. He carefully poured the potion into her slightly open mouth. The guy explained to the girl that it was a he potion. It would help her recover if she drank it. Rin couldn't believe he was willing to give her this potion. The girl suddenly looked at the potion and said that she had 10 of them at home. But they didn't work. Shion axe replied that those 10 potions at home were probably just cheap. The guy poured the entire jar into her mouth. Immediately it was noticeable how her body was recovering. As soon as she felt the recovery, she started crying that she had said those cruel words to him and wanted to apologize. However, the guy said it was fine. He took off his jacket and put it on the girl's naked body. He explained to her that she should rest well. The girl sat wrapped up in the jacket and quietly mouthed the word sorry. The guy turned around and gave a thumbs up, which meant it was okay. A little later, the boy and Haku arrived at the villager's house. The elder said that the only thing they could do was to say thank you, since they had been robbed. But he still handed the boy a bag of jewelry and asked him to accept the reward. Shion axe replied that they had better use them to rebuild the village. Shion axe then said that he just wasn't very good at bling. After all, he was a hero of darkness in the past. All the villagers looked at the guy in bewilderment. Shion axe suddenly felt very embarrassed that no one understood his joke except Haku. The guy turned to the villagers and told them that they should rest well. He guaranteed that there were no more bandits in the village, and if they happened to feel a strange presence or something happened, he would always come to help. The elder grabbed his hand and began to thank him. Shion axe asked the elder to tell his words to Rin. He wanted to call her here, but the guy said there was no need to do that. After all, he was already leaving. Shion and Haku walked away down the path. The guys climbed up on a hill and started looking at this village. Shion said that he would most likely never see these people again. Haku looked at Shion and said that he had something to say on the subject. Shion looked at Haku and said that he would really like to talk to him about it too. At that moment, Rin ran towards the guy and called his name. The guy turned to her and asked if she was really running here to see him. Rin replied that she had something to say. She revealed that she actually knew everything. The girl asked if it was true that her sister had asked him to go to work that day. Shion replied that even if she said that, his sin wouldn't go anywhere. Rin replied that it wasn't anything like a sin at all. The girl ran up to the guy and hugged him. Shion replied that he was a child. He was insanely sorry. He needed to blame someone but he couldn't. He was very weak. He then added that he had already stopped, so he would never say those words again. Rin looked him in the eyes and said that he shouldn't have been responsible for this. After all, he had been working all the time for the good of the village and her sister. For the good of others, he was already a true hero. The girl put her hands on his shoulders and said that he should be for his own sake now. After all, he fully deserved it. He was done being a hero already after all, and that was enough. She winked at him and told him that he had saved a huge number of people, and even if he was having a hard time, he wasn't allowed to die, and handed him a bow. The boy took out a bottle containing the same golden snake he had once caught with Haku. The girl said that he could make a very tasty sake from this snake. He could drink it on his way to town. The guy replied that he would gladly do that. The girl hugged the boy tightly. She mumbled that she would look forward to seeing him the next time he visited their village. Shion looked into her eyes and promised her that he would definitely come back. Haku watched as Shion said goodbye to Rin. When Rin left, Haku said that he remembered something important. Shion was startled by the sudden appearance of the fox. Haku said that he remembered something regarding the golden snake's sake. Shion became curious and asked for more details. The white fox began to tell that about 300 years ago, he heard an anecdote from an ordinary man. When the man was tired of life, most likely his wife made him drink some golden snake's sake. And after that, the man became cheerful and said that he immediately forgot about suicide. Shion realized that all this time, Rin had seen through everything. Shion said that he had to consult with him about something regarding the choice to die together, and asked if it would be better to postpone it for a bit. They looked up at the sky, and Shion said that there was a world in front of them that had yet to be seen. Haku winked at the guy and said that enjoying his life a little more didn't sound bad at all. The guy smiled, looking at the white fox. A dandelion seed fell on the white fox's nose. Haku said he would like to say something to him too. Suddenly Haku's stomach rumbled very loudly. Shion said as expected his stomach was loud enough. The white fox got very embarrassed and ran after his prey. The guy looked at him with a smile. He felt some kind of strange feeling. He realized that not long ago he was a hero of darkness, and not long ago he had dreamed of his death, for he had many sins. However, Shion now felt that he crazily wanted to live. He assumed that this was the feeling people called second life. Now he believed that wandering with a white fox named Haku wasn't so bad. The guy with white hair who was watching Shion covered his face with his hand. He realized that his plan had failed even though he had taken all the trouble to divide the clairvoyance. Yet Shion had gone this far. He couldn't understand how a person who had lost all his powers could go on. The guy with white hair introduced himself before the all-seeing eye as a hero of foresight. The impregnable city of Organa is an impregnable city that can withstand both foreign invasion and the attack of magical creatures. This mysterious city is surrounded on all sides by an outer wall made of a special material. Such walls will not be taken by weapons, magic, or magical creatures. Simply put, this city is particularly resistant to all things magical, and this includes magical devices. It was here that Shion and Haku came. Shion told Haku that it is possible to become the heir of one of the heroes, that is, to get his hero ring. Then he added that applies to the second, but in both cases you cannot have both heroes with the same element. The boy looked at the wall that encloses the city and said that he had never met any divine heroes in his life. Shion said that he could see the enemy's actions and strategy with his senses, and noted that the city of Organa was very impregnable. Suddenly, Haku and Shion were stopped by the guards of the city. A lot of soldiers ran up to the guys and surrounded them. They said that Haku and Shion were dangerous to the people around them. Shion began to explain to the guards that he was just a traveler, and Haku was his pet. There was no way he would hurt a human. The guards made the guy bring proof that the white fox is not dangerous to humans. Shion called Haku by name and ordered him to sit down. Haku sat down and started waving his fluffy tail so much that Shion was tickled by the touch. Shion explained to the guards that this was his way of showing his love for humans, and it was also to collect dust, and generally how he socialized. The guards began to reason that this animal was really smart, looking more like a fox than a wolf. They thought its body was too large, and in their lands such creatures were mostly gray, and this was the first time they had seen such white ones. Haku started to look at these guards. They realized he heard them and assumed it was a top-level magical creature. The guard told Shion that he didn't think a mere traveler could have such a pet. The guy said that to all of this Haku could use spells. The guardian warned that in order to enter the city one must register. The guard asked for a demonstration of the white fox's skill in spells. Haku began to howl. The guards were scared witless, for this roar of the white fox was terrifying. Haku finished showing his skills and said that it was a magic roar spell. It scares the enemy and steals their courage. Shion called out to the white fox and said that he was the only one hearing this explanation, for as it turned out Haku had disabled absolutely everyone around him except Shion. The white fox felt insanely ashamed of this. He felt guilty for he had let Shion down. Shion told Haku not to worry so much, the guards would be fine, but they were able to enter the city in peace. The guy thought about the fact that they spent a lot of time entering the city, and in the time of the Heroes of Darkness, just showing the ring would have been enough. Shion told Hack that they needed to go to the Adventurers Guild to register. He was a little hurt that their position wasn't getting stronger, and they were living as badly as they were. The White Fox asked if he was talking about the third branch of the Adventurer Guild. Haku felt uneasy. He noticed that all the people around him were afraid of him. Shion stroked his back and said that it's okay. They realize that he's a pet, but they are instinctively afraid. Haku laid down on the ground and asked Shion to sit on him. The guy realized that it was really better that way, although he wasn't going to stand out from the crowd in any way. When Shion got on top of Haku, he told him that his name was not only White Fox but also Colorless Fox, and asked if he wanted to see his other form. The guy replied that he didn't need to for now, especially since he trusted him completely. The guys finally arrived at the third branch of the Organa Adventurers Guild. All the guild visitors and adventurers looked at the guys with disdain. Shion was uncomfortable that he was still attracting a lot of attention. Haku said it was because he was walking along with him. Shion and Haku approached the front desk. The guy apologized and told the worker that they would like to register for the guild. The girl replied that if they wanted to join their guild, they should listen to the rules of being in the guild. She began to explain that their guild is one of the affiliates that exist in each country, and are involved in communication and information sharing between them. There are 3 guilds in the authority, and they are all affiliates. She added that the process of joining is different in each branch. There are places where everyone is accepted, some where they have to pass an exam, and if they are accepted they will be given the card she showed them. The girl went on to tell them that there are only 7 ranks from E to A, C and SS. If one didn't do the errands or failed, the rank could be lowered. Then she looked at Shion and asked if he was a warrior mage. The boy was very confused because he didn't realize what he was and looked over to Haku. Shion decided to change the subject and said that although it was irrelevant to the conversation, the White Fox was absolutely safe, so she shouldn't worry. The girl understood him and asked him to tell her about his fighting skills. Shion started to tell her that he was a good swordsman, but he was also good at magic. For example, he could use a lot of low-level spells, but he was best at dark magic. The girl jumped up from her chair and asked in surprise if he really had dark magic. The girl looked at him with burning eyes and said that he was insanely cool, almost like Mr. Axe himself. The boy didn't understand her words. Haku told the girl that he had mad respect for Mr. Axe too. The girl jumped up and said that she was a big fan of his, even though he had been in their city many years ago, but back then she hadn't expected his sudden appearance. Shion couldn't stand it anymore and asked her to stop this talk. The girl came to her senses and told him that they had 2 exams to register, a long one that required 3 months to complete and a short one that only took half a day to complete. The girl looked at Shion and said that she advised him to take the second option of taking the exam. The boy asked what was required for him, and she said that she could only tell him if he confirmed that he wanted to take the exam. Shion realized that the short exam would no doubt be difficult and dangerous. However, he didn't have all the time in the world. The boy looked at the White Fox, and with their glances, they realized that they had to choose the second option. Shion told the girl that he was choosing the short exam. The girl handed the guy a contract and told him that he could be injured or even killed during this exam, and if he agreed, he could sign it. Shion without a doubt immediately signed. As soon as Shion signed the contract, the adventurers entered the guild. They started laughing at Shion and saying that he was unlucky because he had chosen a short exam. One of the adventurers suggested that he play catch-up. The guy looked at the adventurers in surprise and asked if they really wanted to play catch-up. The adventurers explained to him that the game has such a name because the guy chases them all over the city. The girl came up to the guy and held out a basket. She said she was going to explain to him the content of the exam. It turned out that he had to collect hats from everyone in the room within 3 hours. If he could do that, the exam was over. The guy asked how he was supposed to pick these hats off people. The girl replied that any way he wanted, and then added that if the time goes out or a hat is ripped off of him, the exam will be failed. The guy asked if the adventurers would do anything at this point. The girl answered him that they would not move for another 10 seconds. She then ordered everyone to run. Haku looked at Shion and asked if they could handle the exam. The guy replied that if they got out, everyone would scatter whoever was going where. One of the adventurers said that his pet looks quite powerful, however he really thinks he can rip off all the hats. Haku said that it would be quite problematic. Shion said that since he was joining this guild, he should try his best and asked the white fox to help. He of course agreed. One of the adventurers put his sword to Shion's chest and said that they weren't going to spare him. The guy replied that he hadn't thought about it. At this point, Shion reasoned about how he could collect all the hats at once. The adventurer shouted to him not to procrastinate and show his skills. Shion pulled a small black cube out of his pocket and said he would use it. Suddenly a dark cube engulfed the room. Everyone started screaming that they couldn't see anything and everything was gone. The guild worker was also caught in this darkness. She was insanely scared. She heard the voices of the adventurers about not moving so as not to hurt each other, but she couldn't see or feel anything. The girl tried to move from her seat. Her movements were very constrained by the darkness and so she fell. Shion grabbed the girl by the shoulders and apologized for her falling into this darkness as well, for he didn't mean to bring her here. All the adventurers stood still, for they were afraid to move and hurt each other. All those who were caught in the darkness saw nothing and felt nothing. The guy asked the frightened girl if she was alright. She suddenly realized she was lying on top of him and jumped up shouting that she was fine. The guy apologized to her again for the mistake. Haku came to them, bringing a great many hats from the adventurers' heads. Shion was very happy that Haku had brought almost all the hats. The white fox said with a smile that he had collected more than him. The adventurers were confused, not believing that the guy had collected all the hats so quickly. The guy explained that the conditions of the exam said that he could collect them any way he wanted. The adventurers were pretty mad that he was so good at dark magic. The guy was able to collect the hats without anyone noticing. They became very curious about who they were. On the way back from the guild branch, Haku told the guy that they did a good job. They didn't even fight anyone or hurt anyone. The guy on the other hand was a little worried that the dark space he used could have swallowed the entire city but only covered the room. He realized that the magic had weakened a lot. The guy told Haku that they still had money so they needed to find a place to sleep. A slightly upset Haku said that he was unlikely to be taken anywhere and offered to spend the night outside of town, especially since Haku felt that everything here was kind of weak and needed to be fixed. Shion refused to sleep out of town and promised that they would find a place to sleep where they would let Haku in as well. The white fox said with a smile that Shion was too tall, and then offered to start work tomorrow. Suddenly Haku became anxious and started looking from side to side. Shion noticed the white fox's strange behavior. Shion petted Haku and asked if he felt something. A white fox pointed the guy to the all-seeing eye and said that it was here the whole time once they entered the city. He assumed it was a divine hero. Shion said that he had heard that the divine hero had switched 2 years ago. And in fact Shion had felt this strange feeling for 2 whole years. Haku was surprised that it had taken him so long to tell him about it. The white fox realized that the new hero had been following them for 2 whole years. Haku asked Shion how the new hero could be watching him. If 2 years ago he was on another continent altogether, could he really get as far as there? Shion said it was either someone unrelated to the hero or the hero was insanely powerful. Still was wondering who wanted to watch him so much. Haku said he wanted to gather information and find out more about it, in case someone here knew something about the hero. Shion supported him and asked if he could do it alone. Haku replied that once he was done gathering information he would find him by scent and come back. Shion came to his favorite inn, called Favorite Beast. He had slept here once before. Shion stepped inside and immediately smelled the special odor of this room. He always liked it. He heard the visitors talking. Some were talking about how they had no money at all. The adventurers were saying that they had come to this city on the orders of the Lord and they had no discount, and they decided that they should report it to the hero, because he had invited them here. Those adventurers started bragging that their lord was the Dark Hero Axe. The people around them were frightened. Shion Axe was surprised, because he had never met them before and realized that these adventurers were hiding behind his name and committing robbery. One of the men asked if they had any proof, for they rarely had guests who gave the name of a hero. He said he doubted that they were his disciples. The adventurers were hurt by these words. One of the adventurers grabbed the man by his clothes and threatened him. The frightened man began to say that he believed them after all. One of the visitors shouted for them to stop, for the disciples of a great hero do not behave like rude men. The man was grabbed by the shoulders and the other adventurer shouted that he was about to give him proof and swung. The adventurer struck the defenseless man in the chest with dark magic. It was a frightening sight. Shion Axe realized that he had to act somehow or the situation could get worse. Shion noticed that the magic was being sucked out. The adventurer on the other hand yelled at the man that he had very strong dark magic, so he better apologize. Shion Axe flew into the adventurer and yelled at him to stop. The other adventurer threw the man to the floor. The man collapsed without moving. The innkeeper had to agree to them not paying for their stay and apologized. One of the adventurers clapped Shion on the shoulder and said goodbye to him. Shion yelled to stop. The other adventurer snapped at him. Then these deceivers approached their host and asked if he believed they were disciples of the Great Axe. Shion Axe was furious that they were allowing themselves to pull such dirty tricks, especially since there were many children there. As the adventurers started to leave, Shion Axe called them over and offered to try this magic on him. The boy said he just hated that kind of thinking, that the strong milks the weak and gets whatever he wants. And he added that using such strong dark magic just to avoid paying the bills at the inn is really ugly. The adventurers turned around and began threatening Shion Axe that he would now lie down next to the men they had beaten. Shion replied that the way to try to do it is to try to do it, or else just talk idly. The two adventurers activated dark magic into one Shion Axe and started taking his magic. One of the adventurers said that they could suck as much magic out of him as they wanted. Shion Axe grabbed their hands and lifted them above him, saying that if it felt good to them then he didn't care about others. He had seen many such people who thought like that and then lost. The adventurers were shocked, for Shion should have collapsed to the ground unconscious because they had sucked all the magic out of him. The enraged guy asked them if they knew it could be the other way around. Shion started sucking the magic out of them. The villains started screaming in pain, and after a second Shion Axe threw them on the floor. The adventurers like bugs slowly crawled from side to side. Shion Axe explained to them that humans had a limit of magic and a little poison could be a cure. However, if one drank too much, one would die. Guy explained that they had absorbed too much magic, and this state could only be reached with darkness. The adventurers started crying and saying how they had a bad headache. Shion told them that they just had too much magic. They would suffer for half a day, and then it would go away. They started yelling that they were willing to pay. Shion Axe turned around and looked at them with a murderous look and said that of course they would pay, and it was out of the question, and ordered them to clean everywhere in the inn and then be sure to apologize to everyone who was hurt. The villains apologized to Shion Axe and the guy decided to ease their pain a bit. The guy activated recovery magic on the man they sucked all the magic out of. The man tearfully thanked him for it. A little girl ran up to Shion Axe and thanked him, addressing him as a brother. Shion Axe lifted the little girl into his arms and hugged her. Haku came to the inn. He noticed that something was going on here. Shion was surprised that he was back so quickly. The girl in the guy's arms started to reach for the white fox. The innkeeper came to Shion Axe and Haku and the boy asked if they had a spare room for him and the white fox. The man replied that there was anything for him and he also offered them a 30% discount. Haku didn't understand anything, but he guessed that most likely Shion had done some good deed. Shion Axe and the white fox were sitting across the room from each other. Shion asked the white fox about the information he was gathering about the divine hero. Haku started his story by saying that the divine god was gathering information about him. Shion Axe was surprised by this. Haku said that to be honest, he was collecting information about a few heroes, a group of famous heroes who were called the strongest. Shion Axe took his neck and said that the relationship between heroes is always pretty messed up. Shion then said that there was no point in complaining anyway. If they helped, they could be friends. Haku said that it would probably be fine, but just in case, they should concentrate on finding their lost power. Shion Axe replied that he sensed that there was a place with magic stones somewhere around here, but they should work for the guild first. Haku agreed. At that moment a little girl peeked into their room and called out for dinner. Haku was glad to go to the dining room and eat soon. Shion Axe told the white fox that they would get to work tomorrow. The next day, Shion and Haku completed their errand, bringing 4 goblin hands, 30 pieces of mushrooms, and 8 pieces of uaru grass. The girl thanked the two of them and began to pet Haku. She remarked that he was soft and sweet again today, and praised the two of them for being able to complete such a difficult errand on the first day. Shion said they didn't have any problems. The girl said they brought great weed. The guy replied that it was good. The girl started stroking Haku again and said her name was Lily and it was nice to meet her. The guy replied that it was mutual. The girl crossed her arms behind her back and said that Shion is a very strong mage, just like the axe she admires. The guy replied that she is exaggerating and he is not a hero at all. Then the girl said that he did no harm yesterday by pointing his sword at him and saving her, and that is why he is the truest hero to her. The guy got embarrassed and wanted to change the subject to Haku, but he disappeared. It turned out that he had run away on purpose because he wanted them to deal with it on their own. Haku decided that while they were talking, he should go hunting. The 3-headed serpent rushed to attack the Haku, but the fox was not going to retreat and used the thunder squall skill. The thunder squall rained down on the serpent like rain. The heads of the serpent let out a hoarse scream, after which the huge creature's body collapsed to the ground. Haku reincarnated into his normal form as victory was left for him. He was glad that the serpent got what it deserved and took the serpent's huge tail in his teeth. Haku wondered if the Shion would be pleased with his prey. With these thoughts, the fox dragged the huge beast with him. When Haku arrived in the city, he began to look for Shion there. Shion wondered where Haku had disappeared to. The fox waved his paw and offered to come with him to see for himself. When Haku came out of the building with Shion, the boy saw the body of a 3-headed snake. The fox said that it was the same 3-headed serpent that the guild had an order for. The people were surprised that the fox was able to overpower such a huge thing so easily. The guild workers recalled that the Golden Helmet clan had taken this order 3 days ago. Lily agreed with him and the guy asked the female employee to get the owner here. The woman who came up behind them said that there was no need for that. She was the master of this guild. The girl decided to look at their strongest recruit. Walking up close to Shion, she touched his chin and said that he had a cute appearance. Guys like that were just her type. Lily fenced the wizard away from Shion and asked him to stop pulling things like that. The girl laughed and asked Shion to go to his room where they could talk. The head told Shion that she had already contacted the shifters who had taken this order. Earlier they had said that they were about to be defeated by the 3-headed serpent, but suddenly their lives were saved by some kind of magical beast. The chapter looked at the huge fox and assumed that it was the one that had saved these adventurers. Shion was delighted and praised his furry friend. Since they had taken this order unofficially, she couldn't pay them for it, but it was still worth it to thank them. In that case, the head offered to buy the giant from them. The market price of this serpent was around 600 or even 700,000, but she would pay them 800. Haku was surprised that they could get that much. The girl explained that it was a rare monster. They could make furniture or jewelry out of its fangs and skin. She hoped they would accept her offer. Shion thought about the fact that instead of selling it completely, it was better to take it and make weapons and magic items from its skin. Besides, a powerful item could be made from such a strong monster. The girl understood everything and clapped her hands. She said that since his beast had saved the lives of their adventurers, she would make a special offer and offer them 10 million. In addition, the head would raise their rank to TS level. Shion and Haku were clearly happy about such an offer. While eating the meat with gusto, Shion told Haku that they had made a pretty good score yesterday. Haku was proud of himself for being able to get so much money. Even though he said that, Shion thought that actually Haku wanted to save those adventurers. Shion thought that it was very cool. Haku didn't really know who those guys were, but he thought that he shouldn't have said that to Shion. While the fox chewed with his cheeks stuffed, he thought that they would go to the guild today. Shion was completely unaware of what he was saying at that moment. Haku apologized and carefully chewed his food and asked about their going to the guild. Still, he thought of buying weapons or going to look for the stolen magic stones, but he couldn't make up his mind what they would do first. Haku saw Shin's interest in returning them. Without these stones, Shin's magic was sealed and it could serve as a problem for him in the future, so it was best to find them. There was one nearby, but Shion didn't want to go there without a weapon. It was worth buying a magic sword in the city. However, it would be difficult to find one that would be equal in strength to the one Shion had used before. In that case, Haku suggested that they go and look into the home guild. There was a house guild in the city with many different orders, so it was possible to save up money even without any special adventurer skills. Previously, Shion thought that the adventurer guild paid a lot of money. The house guild had connections with magic tool manufacturers. Once inside, they met a good-natured old man who greeted Haku and Shion there. He thought they would like to register with their guild. As for orders, they had 2 types. The first type consisted of various kinds of help. The second type was searching for various expensive luxury items. The reward for completing the tasks was not given in money, but in the form of points. Points could be exchanged for food or weapons. There was no rank system in the house guild and registration was for everyone. However, if they failed an order, they could no longer accept them. The hero thought that they must have powerful magic items since they cooperated with the manufacturers of such items. Shion was counting on being able to get something more powerful. The boy said that he would like to register. The old man replied that there had been a lot of orders lately and could use their help. The elderly administrator introduced himself as a Saburan. The hero explained that he was now in search of a sword and asked to be shown a list of items to exchange. Shion and Haku studied the list the administrator handed them. Fox and Sion's eyes shone with delight. For 1,000,000 points, they could take the saber, the sword of the Dark Knight. It was a famous sword that had resistance to dark magic, and it was also famous for being impossible to break. It was expensive, but Shion really wanted to get it. In his mind's eye, Haku envisioned boar meat for 1,000,000 points. It was a rare magical boar meat that was practically not sold anywhere anymore, and the fox definitely wanted to get his hands on such deliciousness. The old man thought that the heroes had found the items they needed. It was obvious since there was a rather strong dark aura emanating from Shin and Haku. Saburan thought that Shin must have been a very strong young man since he wanted such a powerful sword. Perhaps he could handle that very order, given their wishes. The old man suggested that they take the following task. Saburan wanted to give them an investigation into a case of magic item theft. They have an assignment from foreign guilds that needed to be done quickly. The assignment was difficult, but the reward would be appropriate for them as well. The old man suggested they start right today, and Shion certainly agreed. Saburan opened the doors for them behind the administrative desk and asked them to follow him. He led the heroes to a warehouse with magical items. From here, they delivered items to various places on demand, and there would be one shipment today. Shion noticed that the place had pretty tight security for entry. The building was filled with guards and magical protective barriers everywhere. Despite this, the barrier's protection would weaken during transportation, and this was taken advantage of by looters. Last time, their strongest guards were killed, leaving no survivors, so the guild didn't know who had stolen the magic items. According to rumors, all they knew was that a chain god of death was involved. It was a group of criminals who prey on the transporters of magic items. Shion assumed that they only hunted at night, and the old man confirmed his guess. The old man hoped that Shion and Haku had some clues, but considering that they were dark mages, they didn't leave any clues. The hero told the Saburan that he had a plan and would like to give it to the carriers. The old man promised he would look into it right away and left. Shion asked Haku how he felt. Haku felt absolutely nothing, and neither did Shion. When they entered one of the narrow alleys, Haku inquired about their plan. Shion couldn't use scouting magic right now, so he was going to set a trap. Or rather, he didn't consider it a trap, but rather a small thing. The guy touched the ground, after which a puddle of black matter appeared from it. The hero explained that the dark mages only dominated at night. This time, they were not to allow their items to be plundered. The people were counting on Saburan's plan, and the old man asked to rely on him. While the workers were collecting the goods, a dark puddle appeared behind the back of one of the men. The dark matter reincarnated into a man with a knife who swung it at the man. As soon as he hit the man, the worker disappeared and turned into a dark puddle. The attacker was confused, for someone besides them knew how to use dark magic. Saburan caught the bandit off guard and wanted to know who he was. The stranger realized he had been spotted and tried to run away. He knew that without fail the dark mage was also with this grandfather. As he ran away, the bandit noticed movement behind him and looked back. It was the hero who kicked him with his foot and the bandit fell to the ground. The stranger regrouped and decided to strike back, but Zion didn't give him a chance. As soon as the outlaw got to his feet, a pile of heavy blows fell on him. The bandit sensed that this guy was pretty strong, but he didn't realize who the fighter was. At the very last moment, when Zion wanted to give him a finishing blow, the bandit transformed into dark matter and dodged the blow. He had the great luck to dodge as the Shion punched through the wall, which was right behind the assassin's back. The dark matter ended up behind the Shion. The stranger came out of it and told the guy he was finished, even though he was very strong. The intruder launched the dark magic of the paws of darkness at the guy, but the Shion didn't even turn to face him. At the very last moment, the hero dodged multiple dark magic attacks. The stranger shouted that nothing would change from his running, and he continued to attack the Shion. After a while, he noticed that Zion was running deliberately. Zion must have known that this magic was quite costly. Thus, he was trying to bide his time until his enemy used up all of his energy. Bandit realized that the guy was well versed in darkness magic and dark paw spells. He was the one who protected the guards from the attack. After showering the hero with insults, the assassin decided that he should just increase his strength and took some kind of pill. His eyes became bloodshot and veins protruded on his temples. His strength became so powerful that he was able to discharge dark spiky vines. The vines caught up with the hero and bound his entire body. The thorns began to pierce through Zion's body, causing him to start bleeding. The murderer wanted to strike the decisive blow and pierce Zion's chest through with the remaining vines. Seeing that the hero was bleeding from his mouth, the bandit smirked and replied that he was sorry, but he was stronger than Zion. Zion closed his eyes, whereupon his body dissolved. The bandit was left confused, not realizing where his opponent had gone. But when he turned back around, he saw many of Shion's dark clones. Bandit was shocked, not realizing how Zion was able to make so many doppelgangers. He pulled himself together and realized that he had to kill the real one. Shion said that his dark doppelgangers were weak, but outnumbered him. Even if he killed them, they would be resurrected. Shion was not going to forgive his opponent for using darkness magic for selfish purposes. The assassin couldn't figure out which one was the real one, so he took a few more pills, causing his mind to go crazy. The opponent grabbed his head and screamed, after which several toothy dark monsters burst out of his body. The monsters in the form of dark dragons descended upon the hero's clones. They devoured him one by one, while the maddened bandit ordered the monster to kill him time after time. The dark magic became so strong that the killer could not withstand it. His dark creatures began to dissolve into thin air, and his body became covered in blood. Eventually, unable to withstand such power, the bandit fell to his knees and dropped his packet of pills. The hero realized that he was using a reinforcing pill. Surely his enemy knew very well what would happen to him if he drank it. He took the path of self-destruction, even though Shion forced him to do so. The dying enemy looked at the hero with hatred and asked which one was the real one. Shion saw the bandit's heart shrouded in darkness and didn't understand how he was even able to use magic after that. Shion wondered how his enemy knew about the shipping schedule and asked him a question. The guy smirked and said that dark mages knew everything. Especially they had magic that allowed them to scout the territory. Shion replied that he was lying, because he was obviously not at the level to use it. In addition, Shion knew that the bandit was only a minnow of the chain god of death, and he even has their ability enhancing pill. He was surely connected to them, which meant there were others who had the information. They must have hit someone who possessed magic and allowed them to monitor everything around them. Zion told the dying bandit that the hero of the all-seeing eye controlled them all. The bleeding foe raised his head at Shion, but was overcome by a bloody cough. Eventually his head fell to the ground. Zion did not understand why this man was going to his death for an outlaw. The guy noticed something shiny near the pool of blood. It was the same magic stone, and from the looks of it, it was still intact. The hero picked it up and realized why he felt this guy's presence. After successfully completing the mission, Shion received his points and took the very sword for them. Some of his power had returned, so Shion wanted to put it to the test. Together with Haku, they went to the wasteland where there were many stone mountains. On one of the huge stone cobblestones, the guy used a violent blade dance and swung his sword. Everything in the vicinity, including the stone mountain, shattered into small pieces. Haku was delighted and exclaimed that it wasn't even dark magic, but a destructive force. The hero was glad that he had gotten the wind magic back, and the sword he took from the guild was quite good. The robberies were successfully finished, and now there was only one thing left to do. Shion should have sought out the hero of the all-seeing eye. The guy felt that someone had used scouting magic and they were somewhere in the area. Riding a Haku, he reached the right place where he sensed 5 people. They were probably the strongest mages of the Organ City. 4 of them were inferior in strength, and from the looks of it, they were expecting their arrival. Haku confirmed this and admitted that he had sensed them just now. In any case, they should have only gone forward, and the fox picked up speed. Haku climbed to the top of the building where he and Shin had the best view of the arena. In the center of the building with bleachers was a huge arena with several people in it. The hero descended from the Haku and felt an incredibly powerful flow of magic. They were right to run here. The fox felt no lust for killing, and apparently these people had decided to fight them fairly. They were probably just confident that they would win against them without cheating. One of the young men called out to the hero of darkness, Zion, and said that they had been waiting for him. He apologized when he remembered that Shion was apparently a former hero. Zion grudgingly replied that the lad already knew this, for he had been watching him with that eye. The enemy knew that Shion was the strongest of the heroes, and thus he was a danger to him. Zion assumed that the 4 men behind were the bipeds of the chain god of death. The enemy introduced himself as Randall and suggested that the hero finally remember his name. The boy gladly welcomed Zion to his city and to his arena. A satisfied smirk appeared on Randall's face, but Zion didn't like it at all. Randall welcomed the protagonist to his Organ City and his arena. Of course, he had known for a long time that Zion would come here. Randall knew that the hero of darkness's name was Shion, or it was better to call him Axe. It seemed arrogant to the boy that Randall was calling this town his own. Among those who attacked the Karu village was one who had a special gift of providence, and as soon as Shion left there, she was attacked. It was not at all like an accident, and Shion was sure that there was a traitor in the village. Shion was furious that Randall had leaked information about him and attacked the village. Randall replied that these men were not his servants. He had an interesting magical device, and in exchange for it, Randall was willing to show Shion something. The guy turned to the hero of the topic and asked him not to think about the fact that this world was worth dying for. Opening his magical eye, Randall replied that he had possessed this power since birth, and since he was 20 years old he could look into the most hidden corners of this world. Then he realized that this world was rotten to the core. Heroes used their power to live a better life, and none of them thought about saving the world. But Zion was an exception, and there were no more like him. Shion bared his sword and said that Randall might have been more capable. Shion believed that it was better to die than to aid the chains of the god of death as Randall. Randall was not impressed at all by his speech. Shion used his skill, but Randall replied that this 5-sense attack would not work on him, for his divine providence was not simple magic. The opponent said that he had seen Zion's powers while he was still dreaming and knew how they would move. He had fully studied his fighting style and was certain that Zion could not defeat him. Randall offered to join him as it was his only way to stay alive. Shion had no doubt that he knew everything, but his answer remained unchanged. Randall intensified his eye magic since he already knew the guy's answer. The 4 men that were behind Randall stepped forward and prepared for battle. They raised their staffs upwards and turned to the Overlord. Using their magic, they asked the Lord to spill the blood of their enemies. Along with the spell, dragons began to appear next to the mages. Randall asked the Fang, King, and Flame Lord to manifest curses and spare no effort. The flying dragon technique worked, and a huge black beast landed near Randall along with a white dragon. Randall flew up on the white dragon and his mages climbed up on the black dragon. Shion along with Haku were shocked to see the ancient flying dragon they had summoned. Such a spell required a great deal of magic. Randall flew up into the sky and addressed the strongest hero of darkness, Shion. The guy that called himself the strongest divine hero proclaimed the end of Shion. After his words, the white dragon launched several ball lightning attacks. Shion grabbed the Haku's fur and the fox leaped forward. The ball lightning almost caught up with the Haku, but the fox managed to dodge. At the same time, Shion climbed onto the beast's back. Randall decided to use a stream of fire and asked the dragon to turn sideways in 2 seconds and burn everything in its path. The white dragon opened its maw, preparing to strike the enemy, and the Randall ordered the Shion to burn in the flames. Soon the entire section of the arena was covered in bright flames. Randall expected to see his defeated foes, but the fox somehow managed to dodge. The flames were almost burning his tail, but Haku hoped that Mr. Shion was alright. In a leap, the beast applied its scarlet fox form. It was the form that was resistant to fire and explosions. The hero thanked Haku for his help and asked him to protect them from this fire. This dragon was different from the usual dragon, and it could not think or move on its own. It moved as the summoner would tell it to. Haku assumed that if the summoner lost control, the dragon would also disappear. The hero confirmed his hunch and asked him to watch his fire. Shion asked the fox to move forward and Haku flew right under the black dragon's feet. Randall ordered his creature to pour fire all around and not to miss them and create the first wave 5 seconds later. Meanwhile, his partners called to the Overlord to weave and equip a curse and build this defense. They raised their hands in the air and asked for eternal imprisonment. The huge black dragon was covered by a strange ball-shaped barrier, and Zion decided to strike it. While Haku ran forward, Shion used the wind dance skill and struck the dragon several times. All the blows that the hero dealt to it didn't penetrate that shield, and the guy realized that the dragon's barrier was very strong. Getting off the Haku, the hero thought that it was too early and used Dark Dive. He thought that if he plunged into darkness, the Randall would not find him. From here, he could attack through a stream of fire. The hero hid behind the pillars of the building and used Vacuum Blast. To break through his barrier, he decided to use this spell. A huge black dragon appeared right in front of Zion and spewed its wild flames at him. An explosion ensued, which startled the Haku. The fox hoped that Shinsan was alright and called out to him. The future Rendell's foresight only saw 10 seconds ahead. The lad told the Shion that even if he couldn't see him in the darkness, he would see what the Shion wanted to do. Rendell said that if he interfered with the Shion, he wouldn't be able to attack him and all his magic would shatter the barrier. The enemy thought that the hero would not be able to use his spells against him indefinitely, and ordered the dragon to use a stream of fire. The lad ordered the barrier to be removed and roasted that vixen. The huge dragon opened its wide maw and struck directly at Haku with a Shion. Haku frowned and said that this magic wouldn't hurt him. The fox stepped out of the fire and asked Shinsan to act now. Shion thought this was strange, for their enemy must have realized that Haku was not harmed by fire, but for some reason he continued to pour fire on them. Shion also didn't like the fact that this dragon had removed the barrier on purpose. While the Haku was running away from the raging flames, the hero asked the fox to stop. Shion got there just in time and protected Haku, who almost ran into shards of ice. The hero blocked the ice spear with his sword and shattered it into small crystals. Shion explained that their enemy used ice magic and shot a huge frozen crystal. He hid it behind a wall of fire that had no effect on the Haku. In his red fox form, he was vulnerable to ice magic, and if it hit him, their business would be bad. Randall was impressed that they got away from his attack and decided that things weren't going to be that easy for him. In that case, the guys suggested they run for as long as they could and attacked with fire and ice magic at the same time. The hero that was sitting on the Haku asked the fox to go upstairs. Too many attacks were raining down on them, so Haku decided to use a form that specializes in turning. The fox changed his form to a green fox, which made it possible to jump high and move faster than usual. Haku was surprised at how fast his partner had become and said that in that case, the Rendell wouldn't get them that easily. The fox told Haku that they were pretty sneaky attacks, but it wasn't that bad. The dragons kept harassing the opponents and the Rendell said it was useless. Even if they disappeared in flames, he could still see them. Suddenly, a Shion attack came upon him, which was a surprise to the Rendell. Something resembling a spade almost hit the Rendell, but he stepped aside. He ordered the dragon to stop the attack with fire and quickly reinforce the barrier and dodge. He felt several simultaneous attacks from different places, but didn't realize where so many of them could have come from. From the thick smoke, a lot of Shion clones appeared. Although each shadow clone was weak individually, but if they attacked together, even with his vision of the future, it was impossible to repel all the attacks. The heroes found a way to move around quietly by dissolving into their clones, and this space became a simple camouflage. The hero asked the Haku to run as fast as possible away from the clones, for he had an idea. Randall was impressed by the clones and exclaimed that they had a striking resemblance. At the same time, the white dragon used many ball lightning bolts and intended to destroy each of the clones at the same time. When all the clones were destroyed by the ball lightning, Randall saw the real opponent on the Haku. Randall said that such a cheap trick like that wouldn't fool him and smirked. Shion held a huge bow in his left hand and a ball of lightning in the other. Haku stopped right in front of their opponent, just as Shion had intended. The guy thanked Randall for destroying all of their clones, for this was exactly what he had been waiting for. Randall didn't understand what he meant. From the look on his face, he started to worry when he sensed something wrong. Shion said that before disappearing, the clones used the sphere of darkness to accumulate magic. The sphere absorbed the flying dragon's attack at the moment of their disappearance returned to the hero. The hero hadn't fully recovered yet and so he didn't know if it would work, but he intended to test it now. He wondered what would happen if he charged the sphere with someone else's magic. Shion ordered the fox to run forward and Haku tore full speed towards the dragon. The hero transformed the sphere into an arrow that pierced the abyss and took aim at the dragon with a Rendell. Haku jumped and the moment he jumped, the hero unleashed a powerful weapon at the enemy. The arrow began to clone, causing a hail of arrows to rain down on the monster. All of them began to sink into different places of the monster, including its mouth and eyes. The arrows exploded on contact. They also didn't miss the Rendell's partners that fell dead from the second dragon. Rendell was horrified that their barrier had been breached and the dragon couldn't move. The hero took aim with another arrow that was 3 times the size of the previous one and said that he probably couldn't escape from this arrow. The boy shot one arrow, which just like that turned into a whole hail of arrows. All of them rained down on the white dragon Rendell. The enemy knew that he couldn't escape from such an attack even if he anticipated it. Bleeding out, the white dragon began to fall to the ground. Eventually, the creature dropped dead and the Rendell had to jump aside. Before Randall knew it, a fox ran up to him. Shion, who was sitting on the fox, swung his sword and struck at the Randall. Randall tried to block the attack with his rapier, but the Shion turned in his direction and jumped off the Haku's back. Shion piled on top of his foe and began to push the lying Randall to the ground. Randall tried to block Shion's sword to the last. The hero believed that nothing else would help him, and now it was their own battle. Randall almost hit Zion, but the guy dodged. The enemy said he foresaw the future, so Shion's attacks were too slow. But at some point, Zion ducked and struck his sword straight at the enemy's face. Randall clutched at his cut-closed eyes and screamed, bleeding. Shion hit the source point and the enemy fell to his knees, dropping his rapier to the ground. Shion approached the enemy and told him that the source of his foresight, his eyes, had been destroyed and he would no longer be able to use that power. Now the Randall could only insult the hero. He did not understand the reason why he could not foresee his attack and could not believe it. Shion replied that it was quite possible, for he was faster than his strength. Shion believed that the enemy had relied too much on his strength and had failed to notice his attack in the present. The boy said that he sat in this city and fought weaklings, while the hero fought for his life. The true strength was at the tip of the sword, and it was not to be read by his strength. Zion told the blinded Randall that he was no longer a hero, but since that was the case, he would have to continue. The hero hid his sword in its scabbard and said that he had only taken away his sight. As he left, Zion thought they would never meet him again. Haku wasn't sure if their enemy could be left so easily and asked Shion about it. The fox speculated that they should have arrested him. The hero replied that the Randall had already been caught by them and no one trusted him. Also, he would no longer be able to work with the death god's chains, so they could do it. For the Randall, his eyes were everything and his time as a hero was over. Shion stopped and told the hack that he had made up his mind. The hero was going to live in this world and follow the call of his heart. Haku smiled and thought it was wonderful. Shion thought it would be a good idea to collect all the magic stones scattered around the world, and when they were done, he wanted to make this world as good as possible. The fox was delighted to see such a fighting attitude from his partner. Shion winked at Haku and invited him to join. He also warned that he wouldn't ask twice about it. Haku smiled and said that he probably wouldn't be alone. The hero along with Haku punched each other's fists. Later, when they arrived at the guild, the guys thanked the staff for everything they had done. Shion said that they were going to the next town and hoped that the guild could keep their rank. Lily couldn't believe they were going to leave so soon and blushed. Almost in tears, she pounced on Zion with questioning and misunderstanding. Haku and Shin froze in indignation. They did not understand this behavior of Lily's at all. The head came up behind them and said with a smile that she was sorry. She recalled that Lily had just today wanted to confess to him. The girl pounced on the head and begged not to talk about it. The head chuckled and apologized for it. Still, she thought that Lily should have tried it, because she didn't know what would change afterwards. Lily wiped her tears and replied that it was fine. She believed that the hero would become as great a person as Mr. Axe, although she wouldn't be able to be sure. The girl was about to give the gift to the lad, but the Shion did not want to agree to accept it. Lily smiled and asked to take it since she had made the cookies herself. She said she would pray for his health. Zion took the cookie and thanked Lily. The head was sorry to see them go, for they could have become legends of their branch. Still, she asked her partners to try to be better. As a farewell, she asked to be sure to stop by and see them the next time they were in the organ. The partners were even sorry to leave this place because they met some good people here. On their way into town, they met a certain guy who gathered the people around him. He did not proclaim himself a hero, who sat still and caught only small fish. The stranger had a wide ring on his index finger. He said he used this power to make them happier and showed his proof that he was a hero. Haku assumed that it was the same ring that the divine hero had. According to the rules, a hero with a ring could not refuse to duel, and they were often hunted when they were wounded or sick. When Shion took Rendell's sight, he knew he would lose that ring. Organa has always been the home of the divine hero. That is, there were many strong clans here. Randall watched them and perhaps someone will watch him from now on. Haku suggested that Shion also had the gift of providence in a way, and Shion smiled. The guy looked up at the sky and said that if one only looked to the future, one could miss the present. But he didn't need to. Later, Haku, along with the protagonist, arrived at the capital of the kingdom of Rodin called Rodora. There they encountered a huge monkey with whom they got into a fight. Despite his enormous size, Shion was easily able to shoulder him and topple him to the ground. A crowd gathered around them and assessed their fight. In the end, the wanderer Shion was the winner. As they had previously agreed, Zion got 30 potions. The guy looked at the basket of potions and decided that it wasn't bad. He was not a Haku and could not use regenerating magic on himself. Shion said goodbye to the audience and said that he was already expected. It was the first time people saw Master Gorilla lose. They were curious to know more about Shion. On the way, Haku and Shin stopped by the canteen where they ordered delicious seafood. This fish was quite tasty. The city of Rodora grew up on the Great Rodon River, and so fishing had developed here. Now the country was famous for its fresh river and lake fish. One could stop eating meat after such fish. They were approached by a waiter who asked them about their dinner. Shion smiled and replied that everything was very good. The food was very good and the people of Rodor were very friendly. The hero definitely liked this town very much. The hero also noticed that in Rathor, humans and beastmen lived together and helped each other, but recently they started to discriminate. It hurt the waiter to talk about such a thing. The boy didn't understand what the waiter was talking about and the man advised them not to leave the house at night. They had had a lot of atrocities going on lately. The hero thanked the man for his answer and the waiter left. The hero wondered what the man was talking about and asked Haku about the atrocities that had been happening here. Haku was unsure of his assumptions, but he was thinking about something. He noticed that the walls of the houses and the sidewalk were dented, but the Rodora looked calm, which was very strange. The hero recalled seeing this as well. It was forbidden to use magic in the city, but it seemed to them that these dents were made by very strong magic. While the hero was talking about the city and brushing the Haku's fur, he didn't notice the fox falling asleep. Shion realized that the new city had exhausted him. He was curious to know what was going on here. Taking his sword with him, the guy decided to explore the city and use dark immersion. Thanks to dark magic, the hero found himself right in the middle of the city with no one around. Shion thought it was strange that there was smoke, or rather fog. It was also strange that there wasn't a soul here, although it wasn't too late outside. Before the boy could look around, someone called out to him. Turning back, he saw soldiers running towards him. The soldiers were agitated and asked him not to go out alone at night. They had been having a lot of trouble with the ogres lately and surely Shion had heard about it. The hero didn't understand what they meant and asked the soldiers a question. The city's problems started months ago. This fog covered the streets of the city, and if one stayed in it for a long time, problems could arise. While the soldiers were having a conversation with the guy, someone's scream sounded not far away from them. It was a girl asking for help. She fell on her knees and begged the monster to stop. The huge monster, which looked like a demon with horns, was about to crush the girl with its bare hands. At the very last moment, Shion covered her and blocked the huge demonic fists with his sword. The soldiers were numb with surprise, but the hero asked them to get the girl to safety as quickly as possible. Shion looked up at the monster and thought that it was some new species, for he had never seen ogres this color before. The boy pushed the ogre's hands away with his sword blade and gave it a massive wound along its body. No sooner did the monster bleed out than its wound recovered rather quickly. But after his attack, the ogre grabbed its head and screamed. The monster began to spew its demonic power outward, and became even stronger. It seemed to Shion that the ogre in front of him was a real ogre that had no brains at all. It moved as if it was oblivious to Shion, but there was something strange about its recovery. The enemy opened its mouth and used an attacking explosion magic. Shion dodged and decided to hit the ogre's weak point, its horns. If he cut them off, the ogre would be weakened and easy to kill. The lad reached his opponent's head unhindered and cut off his horns in one fell swoop. The ogre became even more enraged and fell to its knees with wild cries. The monster clutched its head and uttered some female name. Shion heard that he was talking about some kind of Kirin. The guy was about to kill the monster in a split second, but the girl who was almost killed by the monster's clutches asked him not to. She asked not to kill him and the Shion aborted his attack. While the monster was grabbing its head and was weakened, the Shion looked back at the girl, not understanding her. When the ogre came to his senses, he jumped to his feet and started running. The girl lowered her head sadly and Shion decided to question her. The weeping beastman said that he had called her by name and that the monster was her boyfriend. It was another incident of the beastman turning into an ogre, and there had already been more than 10 victims in the past 2 months. Shion was furious when he found out that someone was turning people. Among the Demon King's followers, such things sometimes happened, but for some reason, only the beastmen suffered. Though Shion hadn't been to the entire city yet and didn't know what it might be like in other places. Shion questioned the soldier and wondered if it was possible to turn humans back. At the moment, their king was dealing with the matter, but right now they were powerless. The crying girl said that if they killed him, they would definitely fail. Shion could only agree with her and sympathize. The rest of the soldiers recalled that there was a flora goddess living in a lake not far from here, and perhaps she could help them. The leader of the soldiers bowed to the hero and recognized that Zion was a very strong swordsman. Their king wanted to call upon the heroes and assemble a rapid response squad, and perhaps the Shion would hear his call. Shion nodded his head and promised to think about it. Beastmen were magical creatures, but the hero had heard stories that about 200 years ago, people were turned into beastmen in every village. Most likely, there was such a mist back then too. The hero told Haku that after they separated yesterday, he tried to look for signs of magic and noticed another strong source. It was so far away that he had to leave town. It seemed to Shion that demons were also involved, but he had to find this source first. Upon arriving, the hero got off the Haku and said that this source was somewhere around here. There was a group of people gathered nearby, which seemed strange to Shion. The boy approached the people and asked about the lake near where they were standing. One of the girls replied that the goddess would appear today and listen to their pleas. She was the most beautiful creature in the world, according to them. The hero recalled what that soldier had told him about that very same goddess. Haku, Shion, and the rest of the people raised their heads upwards as they noticed clusters of magic particles in the sky in the shape of a circle. Out of the circle of dazzling particles came a woman in a fancy dress that descended to the ground. People fell on their knees before the goddess and begged her for help. The woman looked at the people with a smile. A warm and radiant aura was clearly emanating from her. The goddess assumed they were here for the first time and asked them not to be shy. She didn't really like stubborn people. Shion smiled at the woman and thanked her for her kindness. The hero's last words began to break off. He himself didn't realize how he had glimpsed a glowing particle of light right on her lush form. Haku called out to Shinsan, who was clearly getting nervous. The girl introduced herself as an Aetna. She hoped they could talk to the Shin and shifted her gaze to the fox. Haku blushed and told Shinsan that he shouldn't have stared at her like that. But the embarrassed hero replied that the fox was mistaken. Haku was shocked when he heard from the hero that she was the source of that magic. They searched for the item, but found the person who found it. Shion apologized for the wait, for this was the first time he had seen the goddess. The girl introduced herself as a person that she had been turned into a fairy and made things that were like divine things. The hero was about to tell her the purpose of their visit, but the Athena suggested that they were looking for a magic crystal. She pulled it literally out of her chest and showed it to Shion. Shion replied that he had once lost these crystals, and if she was okay with it, he would like to take it back. The girl did not mind if this crystal belonged to him, however, he had to honor her request. The goddess' best friend was the hero of water, and she wanted him to call her here. She had something urgent to tell the hero, and if he would bring him, she would give him the crystal. Haku, along with the hero, reached the place that Aetna was talking about. The hero of water must have lived somewhere around here. Fox thought she had beautiful water-colored hair, so they would quickly recognize her. Haku looked around but didn't see anyone. The hero hoped she hadn't changed or they would be looking for her for a very long time. Haku was surprised to find out that Shion and the water hero were acquainted. In fact, they had traveled together some time ago. Haku was curious to hear the story when suddenly someone asked for help. The frightened people pointed to the sky and shouted that a huge eagle had gone mad. It flew straight at the locals and Zion arrived just in time. The guy used darkness magic and summoned a shield of pure darkness that stopped the huge bird. While he held the barrier, Shion ordered the Haku to act and the fox asked to rely on him. A certain girl came up behind him and asked him to stop as this eagle could not be injured. She raised her hand and used soothing water and created a protective cage. In front of them stood the same water hero who locked the monster in its element. The girl walked up to the cage with the eagle and extended her hands to its head. She smiled and said that this water would not harm him, so the eagle could calm down. The bird did indeed calm down and let herself be stroked. The girl smiled and replied that he was fine. This bird turned out to be non-magical, so it was fairly easy to calm it down. The water hero was grateful to the hero for being able to protect their village. She wasn't sure if she could have saved everyone. As soon as she saw the boy's face, her eyes sparkled. For a moment, she was so shocked that she couldn't move. The hero smiled and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The girl's body trembled, after which tears flowed from her eyes. Haku and Shin didn't understand anything at all. The girl couldn't hold back her tears when she saw that Shin was still alive after all. She was so happy about it that she instantly found herself near the hero and hugged him with all her might. The girl cried and could not believe that she had finally found Zion. The girl hugging Zion said that she had missed him and was madly glad that he was alive. Zion was so surprised that he looked at the girl in silence and only lightly hugged her back. She kept crying, for she had previously thought he was dead. Shion apologized for making her worry. Now he was not a hero of darkness. He had a lot going on, so he remained alive and unharmed. Arya agreed with him and said that Shion could not die so easily. She was so pleased with him that she almost reached for his lips. Feeling as awkward as possible, both of them immediately blushed and came to their senses. Arya didn't know how to explain it and just apologized to him. Shion turned away from her and also asked her to forgive him. Haku smiled and walked over to them and suggested that they were not simple acquaintances, but were connected by deep ties. Shion smiled and asked them not to poke around like that. The hero introduced his furry friend Haku, with whom they are traveling together. Arya was delighted to see what a strong animal was traveling with Shion. The girl smiled and introduced herself by her name. She was very pleased to meet the Haku. The fox smiled back and exclaimed that they would get to know each other. He was also very pleased to meet her. Hero told Arya that the goddess Athena was waiting for her at the source of the flora and it looked like she had something urgent to tell her. He hoped she would go along with them. Arya smiled and said that of course she would go with them since Athena was her friend. The boy thanked her and sat on the fox's back and suggested they go on their way. Haku winked at her and suggested that she hold on tight to Shion as they would be shaken. Arya thanked Haku for the warning and moved closer to Shion. Apologizing, the girl blushed and hugged Shion from behind. The hero looked at Haku in surprise and said that they wouldn't be shaking too much, so she might not have pressed herself against him so hard. Haku rolled his eyes, as Shion clearly didn't understand anything. Soon all three of them walked back to the lake where the goddess Athena was waiting for them. Athena grabbed her friend's hands and exclaimed that she was looking forward to seeing her. The girls jumped with happiness and Arya exclaimed that they hadn't seen her in a long time. It seemed to Haku along with the hero that there was a beautiful atmosphere between them. The last time Shion saw Arya, she was a child, but now she was an adult. Seeing that was quite amazing. The girl wanted to know what urgent business Athena had summoned her for. Athena lowered her gaze sadly and said it was about the transformations of beastmen into ogres taking place in the kingdom of Rodin. Athena knew that Arya had purification magic and could most likely stop the transformation into ogres. Athena was referring to her holy water. Holy water removed the effects of turning into zombies and illnesses. It would definitely help if not much time had passed since the transformation. Athena wanted to help the people who came pleading for help and hoped her friend would help her. The girl understood everything and said that as one of the heroes she couldn't ignore it. Athena grabbed her friend's hands and exclaimed that those were beautiful words and a true personification of a hero. The girl was embarrassed and looked at Shion, who was in complete agreement with Athena. Arya replied that she was merely imitating one man, and she had borrowed the will of the hero from Shion. When she was a child, she did not want to learn heroism. The kingdom of Valanche with the hero of water, and the kingdom of Orast with the hero of darkness were in a state of protracted war. However, the protracted war was ending with the appointment of a new hero of darkness in the kingdom of Orast. Because of him, the kingdom of Valanche could suffer a total defeat if it continued to fight. Possessing dangerous darkness magic, the evil hero of darkness could destroy an entire country on his own, and Arya accepted that he could defeat any hero. During the ceremony of truce between the two countries, many townspeople gathered in the plaza, and there were those who opposed the truce. They tried to kill the king by attacking a summoned beast. The recognized beast was a huge Cerberus with 3 heads. Arya tried to stop the beast with little knowledge of magic and save the people, but she failed to do so. Her magic was easily repelled without a hint of victory, and the beast cornered her. Arya fell to the ground and could only beg for help. When the girl saw the huge mouth of the Cerberus open, she closed her eyes and covered herself with her hands. But when she opened her eyes, the same fearsome fangs were no longer in front of her. There above the defeated beast stood the hero of darkness. The masked guy looked back at the girl, wanting to make sure she was okay. He bent over the frightened girl to help her. The hero of darkness turned out to be a Zion. The guy took off his mask and said it was over so she could go back to her mother. When the girl saw him, she couldn't take her eyes off Zion. At that moment she was first imbued with admiration for the role of a hero. She wanted to get as close to him as possible, so she began to train hard, and by the age of 12 she had already received the Water Hero's ring from her mentor. Since then, Arya saw Zion often as she became a water hero, and they even spent time together. Zion was 7 years older than her and treated her like a younger sister, and she accepted it since he had a woman he loved. One day when Zion was doing his duty as a hero, his beloved was killed by a beast. Arya wanted to help him deal with the pain of his loss, but under pressure from the kingdom of Valanche, she was no longer allowed to work with him. Even while at peace, the hatred of the Orast kingdom deeply affected the heroes who stood up for their country. Since then, 5 years had passed since her separation from Shion when suddenly she heard shocking news. Arya heard that the hero of darkness, Zion Axe, had died and that a successor was now being sought for him. The girl cried and could not believe that a strong man like Shion could die so easily, but humans could not be omnipotent. She could not sit still so easily and headed for the kingdom of Oras to see for herself the death of Zion. She was indeed happy to meet him in full health and to be with everyone now. Haku made sure that she really continued to love with all her soul Shion despite the fact that so many years had passed. But Haku realized that the object of love itself understood absolutely nothing about it. Together with Arya, they didn't understand how he could be so thick-skinned. Athena handed the boy the promised magic stone. The hero thanked her for his stone and took it away. When the stone was in his hands, he felt a rather pleasant feeling, just like that time. He felt his magic returning. Haku suggested that he try the returned power. Shion wanted to do it, but it was getting dark soon, and he was worried about Rodora. He needed to get back to the city soon. When they returned to the city with Arya, Haku scrutinized the smells in the streets. He smelled a slight odor of rot, which meant that there were zombies nearby. The hero speculated that perhaps they were using zombie powder. Arya wasn't sure if that was possible in such a large area and asked Zion about it. The guy put his finger up to make sure of the direction of the wind. The side the wind was blowing from might have used wind magic to spread. The hero replied that they could trace where the wind was blowing from, but today they had to deal with the ogres. The holy water of the area could reverse the transformation into an ogre, but that was not certain. With the detection of magic, they would find yesterday's ogre. Shion hoped the Haku would give them a ride, and the fox gladly agreed. The girl said that if demons were behind it, it was unclear what they were after. Shion suggested that they probably wanted to break up the beastmen or humans, and they had conceived such a plan to do so. They probably wanted to plant the seed of discord, and as always they did things the dirty way. Haku stopped and suggested that the boys take a look at this. Right in the middle of the field sat a huge ogre that was devouring its prey. Both of its horns were broken off, which meant that the ogre in front of them was the same ogre that Zion had fought. It seemed to the girl that he was eating someone. She was afraid that even her magic wouldn't be able to bring him back to his former state. Shion got off the Haku and was about to attack the ogre. At that moment, an Arya called out to him. The girl said she could immobilize him, so they could help her until she accumulated her mana. In that case, the hero asked Haku to help the area while he distracted the ogre. As he approached the ogre, the hero drew his sword and apologized to him. He told the enemy that he would have to fight him and use dark cloning. Together with his clones, the hero rushed to attack and the ogre decided to respond with his fist. The monster struck with all his might, but missed and destroyed the ground beneath him. Shion found himself behind the enemy and warned him that he was here. The ogre lost its temper and decided to use its breath. The guy used a dark shield to protect himself. Shion didn't feel the presence of intelligence and noticed that he was no longer fighting back like yesterday. If he had the ability to bring him back from such a state, he wanted to believe it to the end. Arya warned Zion that she was ready and asked him to step back. The hero understood and quickly bounced aside. The girl turned to her ice and asked to bind her opponent in her ice petals. After casting the spell, she applied the magic circle of the ice flower. Directing the spell at the ogre, she commanded them to bloom. Several magical seals immediately sent out shards of ice that began to freeze the ogre. When the monster realized he couldn't move, he tried to get rid of the ice that bound half of his body. Arya replied that this would not help, for this ice would not break until she broke the spell. Haku ordered him not to move and sank his fangs into the ogre's left arm. The hero supported his partner and immobilized the ogre's right arm with the dark palm skill. On one side of the monster was held by Haku, and on the other hand the arm was held back by powerful dark tentacles of Shion. Shion called out to Arya and the girl begged to be left to her. She jumped straight at the ogre, about to strike him. Arya gathered all her strength in her leg and kicked right into the ogre's stomach, causing him to scream. As the ogre screamed in pain, the girl apologized for her kick and poured divine water into its mouth. All three of them ran back, waiting for the effect of the water. The ogre lowered its head and clutched its throat with its hands. He screamed with all his might, and the Arya begged him to come back to them again. Steam began to emanate from the monster's body, after which its shape began to slowly change. Eventually, the creature began to acquire a meaningful look. When the beastman regained his true form, he looked up questioningly, not realizing what had happened to him. Haku explained that he had fallen under the effects of the miasma and had been turned into an ogre, but now he was himself again. The hero was glad that they had succeeded and praised the Arya for a great job. After that, the beastman returned to Siren. The girl could not believe it and exclaimed that it was a real miracle. While the young ones were rejoicing at their reunion, Zion asked to be notified if the transformed beastman appeared. He told the soldier that they could cancel the curse with holy water. The soldier bowed and thanked Zion for his assistance, but Zion thought he was just doing what he had to do. Arya was happy to see how these beastmen loved each other and thought that love is beautiful. Looking at them, she envied them and Haku could understand her. He too had been lonely for a long time. The girl told the fox that now he had Shion, so he was not lonely. Besides, she loved Haku too. Haku was happy to hear that and thanked her for her warm words. It was great that he had such comrades. Arya smiled and hugged the fox's wide and soft tail. Shion approached the boys and apologized for the wait. He wanted to get Arya a private room if it would suit her. The girl smiled and replied that it was better to stay all alone in the room since she trusted them. She waved her hand and said that they shouldn't have been cautious since they had been friends for a long time. Shion agreed and smiled at the girl. He stroked Arya's head and said that she just shined today. Haku was pleased to see how the two got along with each other. At breakfast, the girl decided to tell the guys how she walked down the street yesterday without hiding her face. None of the passers-by even knew that she was a hero. She didn't know whether she should have been happy or sad. Zion thought it didn't matter because there were many heroes. Besides, it was unlikely that people could remember them all. Arya thought that she just wasn't as famous as Shion. Haku recalled that there should be a weapons hero in this city, but there wasn't one right now. Shion assumed that he must be somewhere far away right now. The hero's path was winding. For example, they could be tasked with killing the Demon King. There were many places where heroes were sent. After all, he was the face of the state. However, when the danger in the kingdom of Rodan, their hero was absent for some reason, and it seemed strange to Shion. Arya and Haku agreed with him and thought that in that case, the citizens would probably be worried. At that moment, soldiers came in and greeted the guy. They said they were looking for him, and the Shion thanked them for yesterday. The soldiers wanted to make sure that the hero was a Zion, and the lad confirmed it. The head of the soldiers said that he had been summoned by the king on a case of turning into ogres. His friends were to go along with him and they were to report to the king immediately. Later, the protagonists chased the soldiers into the very Rotten. There the king was informed that Zion and his friends had arrived. The king thanked them for their service and the heroes for their visit. The heroes bowed to the king and asked permission to introduce themselves. Zion introduced himself first, but the king asked them to leave the formalities. Besides, he had called them himself. The king had heard about their work from the soldiers. They couldn't deal with it and Shion and his boys came to the rescue. It was a worthy feat, but Zion explained that he could not leave the men in trouble. The king had also heard that they used holy water, which was beyond the power of an ordinary person to make. He wanted to know where they got it from. Shion introduced the area and said that she had made this water. Despite her youth, she was a true water hero and their comrade. The king exclaimed that this was unheard of and did not understand what a water hero was doing in his country. Arya said that her comrade was in trouble so she came to help him. Helping one's comrades was the duty of every hero. Meanwhile, the girl was madly happy that Shion called her his comrade. The king paid attention to Zion's magical pet, which was clearly of the highest level. The king was curious about Shion's personality. Zion rose to his feet and said that he was a simple wanderer, nothing more and nothing less. His gaze shifted to another man who made him tense up. Suddenly, the hero felt a strong aura that emanated from this young man that stood on the left side of the king. The hero wondered who this man was who stood near the king and pressed him unnoticed by others. The king rose leisurely from his throne and told Zion that he had a request for him. The old man said that he was going to find the source of the miasma tonight, and if demons or magical beasts were behind it, they were to be destroyed. He hoped Zion would join them. The king turned to Zion. His look was puzzled. The man said that he had a request for him. The king continued that tonight he was going to find the source of the miasmas. He added that if demons or magical beasts were behind all of this, they had to be destroyed. The king asked Shion if he would join them. Zion looked at the king. Zion bowed. He replied that he was afraid it had been quite some time since the incident with the ogres began. The hero stood up. He asked the king that he was rallying the troops. The king looked over to his subordinate. He replied that the soldiers had found sources of miasma, but due to the increase in the number of magical beasts, it hadn't gotten to the point. The king clenched his hand into a fist. He continued that however, yesterday, their hero returned from abroad. The king pointed to a young man who was standing nearby. He said that it was the hero of Claire's arms. The hero of arms extended his hand. He apologized for the late introduction. The boy introduced himself as Claire's gun hero Austin. He continued that he was happy to meet Zion Arya. Shion said they were pleased too. Claire turned to Huck. He said it was nice to meet him too. The hero of weapons addressed Huck as if he were a wolf. The fox got angry. He corrected his new acquaintance, saying he wasn't a wolf, but a fox. Claire smiled awkwardly. He apologized. The fox thought he did it on purpose. Shion turned to Claire. He asked who the gentlemen over there were. Claire replied that those people were members of his group. He continued that, counting those who weren't here, there were only 30 people. The boy added that they were all supposed to be part of this operation. The king turned to Zion. He asked the hero to help them. The king explained that, recently, humans and beastmen had begun to feud with each other, and this was what the enemy wanted. Claire became serious. Shion replied that, in fact, they were already thinking of moving out tonight. The girl who was standing next to him said that she was in on it too. The king said it was clear to him. The man thanked them. Everyone present gathered around the table. Only the king sat on his throne. He said that as they had planned, the operation would begin tonight. The king continued that the participants were Claire's group, Shion's group, 30 soldiers from an elite unit. The man extended his hand to Shion. He said he was the commander of the soldiers and his name was Darga. The man asked Shion to love and pity them. Zion responded positively. He, too, extended his hand for a handshake. The hero was surprised. The commander squeezed Shion's hand with great force. Zion thought that he was exerting force for a handshake. The hero asked himself that the commander was testing him. Shion didn't want to compete with the warriors by their own methods. He closed his eyes. Shion thought he should have shown some strength. He smiled. The hero said to be loved and pitied as well. The commander asked what it was. He fell to his knees in pain. Their hands were still in a handshake. Claire remained silent. The king asked what was wrong. The commander shouted, asking for Shion to let go of his hand. Zion smiled and let go of his hand. He apologized for being rude. Claire walked up to the commander. He asked that he was okay. Claire also asked that he was strong. The commander replied that Zion was very strong, even too strong for a human. Claire's face changed. He said that was interesting. Claire interjected that it was about strategy. He told the king that he would let the soldiers handle it. The guy continued that if someone big showed up, his group and Zion's group would deal with them. Claire asked the king if he was in agreement. The king agreed with him. He said that if there were unforeseen circumstances, however, they shouldn't have been heroic. The king added that they couldn't afford to lose a hero. Claire brought his hand up to his chest. He said as he obeyed the order. Shion's group was about to leave. Claire caught up with them. He asked Shion if he would keep him company for a while. Claire smiled. He explained that he wanted to try out a magic item he had recently gotten. Shion agreed. They were in a courtyard. A cage stood in the center. There were warriors standing next to it. There were monsters sitting in the cage. Claire held a magic bow in his hands. He pointed it at the cage. Claire said that he was about to try out this magic bow on them. Shion recognized the winged goblins. He thought that Claire had already prepared himself for archery. Claire said he was ready. He ordered the warrior to let all but one of them out. The girl asked Shin why he left one out. Haku let out a breath. He asked, wondering why. The winged goblins were released from the cage. The monsters headed towards Claire, who was at the ready. The goblins were about to attack Claire. Claire put out a magical bow in front of him. He loaded the bow with arrows that had magic in them. Claire said that it was very good. He continued that he was burning with their bloodlust. Claire shouted that they were pathetic monsters. The guy yelled that the monsters needed to be blown to pieces beautifully. He released arrows. The released arrows reached one monster after another. The girl said that the arrows released came back in a variety of ways. Shion just watched this performance. The monsters were falling around Claire. The king told Claire that it was a beautiful job. Claire bowed. He asked all the ladies and gentlemen if they enjoyed the performance. Guy continued that the arrow that was released was bound to hit the target. He raised his magic bow. Claire said that was the power of his new weapon. Shion thought that he was shooting not one but 4 arrows at once. He said that this magic item was quite good. Claire smiled. Claire turned to Shion. He said that there was one monster left. Claire asked him if he wanted to finish off the last one. Shion was puzzled. Shion thought that this hero was a pretty good strategist. Shion realized that he had decided to do more than just compete in strength. Claire held out a magic bow to him. Shion thought that the sun was at its zenith, which meant there was plenty of sunlight. The hero continued to ponder that. In other words, this was the most unfavorable period of the day for the Master of Darkness. Shion closed his eyes. He replied that it would be unpleasant to fight alongside someone whose abilities he didn't know. Claire smiled. He said that it was good that he understood him. Claire continued, saying that as soon as he was ready, he was interrupted by Zion. He said that he was always ready. Fox yelled for him to brace himself. The girl said he would surely win. Shion waved at them. He thanked his friends. The last winged goblin flew out of the cage. Shion looked at it. The monster had used magic to attack Shion. The hero was more serious than ever. He applied the Dark Palm spell. The magical hands reached the monster and restrained it. Claire thought that even in the sunlight, he used darkness magic of this level. The magical hands grabbed the goblin by the throat and began to choke it. The monster wriggled, trying to get out. The goblin collapsed in front of Shion. The hero drew his sword and cut off the monster's head. Claire said that such a force of darkness in the middle of the day was beyond awesome. He added that, before long, he would probably surpass Axe's darkness hero as well. Shion turned to him. He said that if the skill checks were over, they were leaving. Claire smiled. He thanked them for their time. The girl said he seemed strong. Shion added that he was good with a bow. The fox asked that why such a strong hero would need a squad of 30 men. He asked Shion that he didn't think it was a little strange. Shion replied that it was possible that they had a role to play. The warriors were on horseback. They were preparing for battle. Claire said that they would stop the cause of the miasma and bring peace to Rodora. Claire raised his sword. He addressed everyone, saying it was a victorious sword. The warriors also raised their swords and began to shout. Zion's group also raised their swords, but they were silent. The troops moved forward. Claire said that there had to be ruins ahead. He continued that there could be an enemy lurking here. The boy closed his eyes. He added that fate was an interesting thing. Claire was saying all this to the girl from Zion's team. He said that he couldn't imagine that one day he would be together with a hero of another country. Claire exclaimed that he was very happy. The girl replied that lucky or not, they would still try their best. Claire told Arya that, in fact, she was beautiful. He suggested to the girl that she would join him starting tomorrow. Claire added that they would work together. Arya clasped her hands together. She asked for forgiveness. The girl said she already had someone in mind. Arya blushed a little. The girl started talking about him. She said he was gorgeous, he had black hair, he was confident, strong and very kind. Arya looked up. She blushed even more. The girl continued that he channeled his power where he thought it was right. She smiled. Arya said that she loved the man. The girl said that those who took a bunch of people with them and tried to set up a tricky test. Claire was puzzled. Shion and Haku started to get nervous. Shion told Arya to stop. The fox said she had gotten too far away. Claire smiled awkwardly. He said the man Arya loved was a lucky man. One of the warriors called out to Claire. He rode over on his horse. He shouted that there was a monster directly ahead. The warrior said it was an ogre, plus it was purple. Claire said that judging by the color of its skin, the monster was a former beastman. He continued that they had holy water. Arya was ready to fight. Shion said that they could bring back his appearance. Claire ordered the squad to line up. He shouted the ogre was on its way. 9 purple ogres appeared in front of them. Claire asked the 9, all at once together. The monsters were ready to fight. Claire thought that the amount of holy water would be enough for all of them, but it would be difficult to heal them all. He said that the decision was hard, but they had to be destroyed. The monsters attacked and quickly incapacitated the troops. Claire thought that this was a bad thing. He shouted that the formation was broken. Haku said that they left the monsters on him. He used the green fox spell and rushed to attack. The monsters were falling from Haku's attack. The ogres were screaming in pain. Claire shouted that the monsters were being harassed. He continued that while there was time, they needed to regroup. Claire realized that not all was still lost. Claire said that was great. He asked Shion that it was a special skill of a magical fox. The young man replied that Haku didn't only have that attribute. He added that, in addition, his and Arya's powers were not inferior to Haku's. Shion asked Claire to let them help those 9 ogres drink the holy water. Claire fell silent. He replied that he understood his feelings. Claire told Zion to see for himself. He asked Zion how he planned to stop and give them a drink when they were rampaging. The boy added that it was too risky. Shion asked Claire. He said that if there was even a slim chance, he would try. Arya asked as well. She said she could freeze them. Claire said even Arya wanted that. Claire said he was giving them 5 minutes. He continued that after that time was up, they would start slaying the monsters. Claire shouted, ordering everyone to stop the monsters instead of killing them. He added that it was necessary to help Shion. Zion thanked Claire. Arya asked Shion that they should have been frozen like last time. Zion replied in the affirmative. He continued that he was going to use the dark hand then. The young man told Haku not to let the ogres come up here. Haku replied that everything was covered. The ogres stood their ground. Shion was determined. Shion told Arya to try to freeze more ogres. The young man added that he himself would stop the top of their bodies with his dark hand. Arya said she understood. She gathered trickles of water around her. Claire said that the ogres had an instinct to attack the mages in the rearguard. He continued that they had to keep the monsters from approaching Shion and Arya. The ogres were ready to attack. The ogres stood close by. They began to scream. The monsters were attacking the army. One of the ogres headed towards Shion and Arya. The horse was scared. Haku said he wouldn't let that happen. The fox attacked the ogre and knocked it to the ground. Arya thanked Haku. Arya created a magic circle. She applied a glaciation spell. The lower part of the monsters' bodies were covered in ice. One of the warriors exclaimed that the magic circle was ice-colored. The warrior said that everything iced over in the blink of an eye. He added that they were definitely going to make it work. Another warrior replied that she was a water hero for a reason. Shion thrust his hand forward. He applied a dark palm spell. Magical threads began to bind the upper part of the monsters' bodies. Shion shouted as the 5 were disarmed. The monsters tried to get out, but they were having no luck. Arya walked over to Claire. She said that they had to be given holy water. The girl added that she needed them to help her too. Claire got down from his horse. He ordered all the soldiers to split up and get the monsters drunk. Arya took off and got one of the monsters drunk. All the others began to follow her example. Arya said that now they had to regain their form. She looked at the restrained monsters. Shion and Claire stood next to each other and looked at the monsters. One of the monsters started screaming. The veins on the ogre's face swelled. The other monsters started screaming as well. They wanted to break free from the shackles. Arya looked at them. The girl asked what was the matter with Sim. She continued that they didn't return their appearance like last time. Arya started to get nervous. The pupils of one of the monsters enlarged. The girl said that nothing happened. Haku turned to Arya. He asked if there was a chance that it was already too late. Arya was very nervous. She didn't believe it. Shion was worried that the ogres and the 9 of them were able to coordinate. The hero's face changed. He realized that there was no doubt that the monsters were controlled by someone. Claire said that there were demons involved in this ogre incident after all. He looked at Shion. The young man looked at him as well. Claire said that it had been decided. He drew his sword from its sheath. Claire continued that it was useless to fight any further. He ordered the soldiers to destroy these monsters. In both hands, Claire held his swords. The ogres kept trying to get out, but the shackles were too strong. Claire looked at them. Claire was fast. He chopped off the heads of 3 of the ogres. The soldiers thrust their weapons into the bodies of the remaining chained ogres. Shion didn't know what to do. Claire shouted for the soldiers to kill the remaining 4. Shion motioned for Claire to stop. He touched Claire's shoulder with his hand. Shion yelled for them not to kill those 4 yet. Claire turned his head. He asked Shion that he wanted to try to give these monsters holy water as well. Claire explained that it was already too late on the others. They stood across from each other. Shion replied that even if that was the case, they still had a small chance. Claire hesitated. Claire turned around. He told Shion to hurry because they didn't have much time. Shion thanked Claire. Haku asked Arya if she could cover him with ice magic. The girl replied that it was a thank you. Streams of water floated around her again. The girl put her hand forward and cast the ice flower magic circle spell. Arya created a magic circle. Haku cast the spell hurricane waves. The monsters found themselves in a hurricane. Chunks of ice crashed into them every now and then. Claire shouted that they had to move forward while the monsters couldn't move because of the blizzard. Shion agreed with him. The young man took off next to one of the ogres. Shion poured the contents of the flask into the monster's mouth. He asked, only to be successful. The ogre began to growl. Shion stood in front of the ogre. He asked himself what didn't work. The remaining monsters had warrior weapons stuck in their bodies. All of them had been killed. Claire shouted they didn't have time to help them. Claire stood in front of the last monster. He continued that this meant it was too late to help the last one as well. Claire prepared his swords. The monster was closed by Shion. He shouted that it wasn't time yet. The young man kept shouting that suddenly it would work with this monster. He shouted that he wished he could save at least one. Claire lowered his swords. He called out for Shion. Zion shouted, ordering the monster to identify itself. The ogre touched his head with his hand. The monster tried to say his name was Gaius. He repeated his name. Shion ordered Gaius to return his appearance. He asked the monster if he had a dear one. The young man said he needed to remember him. The monster repeated the dear man in syllables. Zion shouted that everyone was waiting for him at home, so he needed to gather his will in his fist. The young man continued that he wasn't any ogre, he was a beastman. The monster grabbed his head. He remembered Isla, his father and his mother. The ogre's features began to change into those of a beastman. The ogre turned into a beastman. Guy said that his name was definitely Guy. Claire looked at all of this with amazement. He thought that the ogre had reacted to Shion's words and regained its appearance. The beastman repeated that his name was Gaius and that he was not a monster. Guy was not feeling well. Shion put his arms around him. Shion told him that everything was fine. He added that the beastman had done a good job. Arya gave Haku a hug. They smiled and were happy. Haku exclaimed that they had managed to save him. The soldiers also triumphed. Claire smiled. Arya said that it was their Zion. The girl exclaimed that it was brilliant. Shion approached them. Haku told Shion that his will was unwavering. Shion said that their support helped him too. He smiled. The young man continued, saying that it was good that at least one was helped by the holy water. Claire walked over to them as well. He said that the soldiers were to escort Guy to the city. Claire added that it was okay to take it easy. He became serious. Claire said that he had a conversation with them. Claire said that since he was the commander of that unit, he could not turn a blind eye to what had happened. Claire continued that, by sheer luck, he and his soldiers were unharmed. He continued that, however, because of Shion's selfishness, they could have all been killed. Arya countered that it was because of Zion that he was saved. The girl continued that she saw no reason to tell him off. Haku turned serious. Fox said that he too thought that Shion had done the right thing. Shion thanked his friends for their support. He said that everything had been fine. The young man bowed in front of Claire. Zion apologized to him. Claire told Shion to raise his head. He smiled. Claire continued that he seemed to have overreacted as well. He added that as a human being, he felt good about Zion's actions. Claire said that it had been 7 years since he'd been a hero. He raised his hand. The guy continued that he remembered his first time. Claire turned around and was about to leave. He said it was settled and they should have moved forward. The troops made it to the Rodora ruins. Claire said he had heard that in the old days, the terminally ill were left here. He added that those who were able to move didn't help those left behind. Arya replied that they were overwhelmed with the grief of indifference. The girl became saddened. She continued by saying that after the deaths, all of the Ori had become embittered. Claire laughed. He said he was told that a lot as a child. A startled Arya said she didn't digest such things. Shion and Haku laughed. Shion said she had nothing to worry about. Fox backed him up. He added that the spirits themselves would have run away from them. One of the warriors turned to Claire. He said there was someone at the entrance to the ruins. Claire asked if it was some kind of monster. The warrior replied that it was dark and far away, so he couldn't see. A dark sphere appeared in Shion's hand. He looked at it. Afterward, the young man said that there was a monster with huge mana standing near the entrance. Shion continued that he felt a large accumulation of mana in one place inside the ruins. Claire said that there was a possibility that there were higher demons there. He ordered everyone to move forward without losing formation. His horse was the first to move forward. Zion asked him what they were going to do about the enemy near the entrance. He asked what it cost them to deal with him. Claire replied that it would be a good thing. Claire got down from his horse. He continued on, telling Zion to give him opportunities to prove himself as well. They reached the ruins. The monster was waiting for them. Claire wasn't the least bit embarrassed. The monster was a skeleton wearing armor. In his hands, he held a huge sword. The warriors looked at the monster. One of them wanted to take out the sword. Claire turned his head towards his subjects. He said he was going to show them something they hadn't seen before. Claire focused on his opponent. He said they needed to get started. Claire was determined. He started the fight. Claire thought that he would never forget the day the monsters killed his childhood friend. The monster began to growl. He raised his sword above his head. Then Claire swore to himself. The monster attacked Claire, but Claire dodged it. Claire then swore to himself that he would destroy every single monster. He attacked the monster. Then he landed, expecting the monster to be killed. There was only a scratch on the monster's armor. Claire saw it. He said that the blade wasn't particularly effective for this fight. Claire turned to his warriors. He ordered them to begin. The soldiers prepared their weapons. Claire said 3. He prepared for another attack. The warriors knew the command. Some of the warriors pulled out a huge axe. Claire grabbed the handle of this weapon. The monster pointed his sword at him. Claire cut off the tip of the monster's huge sword in one motion. Claire said 7, ordering the archers to attack. A hail of arrows fired by the archers flew into the monster's skull. Claire said 2, ordering the monster to be captured. Steel chains bound the monster's hands. Claire addressed the monster as an inferior demon. Claire asked if the monster noticed that it always used weapon enhancement magic. Claire himself answered his own question in the negative. He pulled out a huge weapon. Claire shouted that his end had come. He pointed the weapon at the monster and went through its torso. The weapon left a hole in the monster's body. Claire landed behind the monster. The monster started making different sounds. It began to fall. A mist of dust formed from the fall. Claire looked at it all. Claire smiled. He asked what seemed like he was overdoing it. Shion walked over to him. He told Claire that the battle was beautiful. Claire replied that he was flattered by his praise. Shion asked that the numbers he was calling were a type of attack. The young man continued that Claire had timed the archers and grappling attack perfectly. Claire explained that he had been collecting a lot of weapons. The warrior took his weapons. Claire continued that that was why it took him time to get them and use them. He added that they had companions to help with the continuous attack to do so. Claire pointed to the wagons with weapons. Shion replied that this was how it was. He added that the attack was the defense. The young man thanked him for his advice. Shion thought that this was the number of people he needed to transport the weapons. Shion realized that the weapon itself was nothing special, and that Claire himself was using magic to enhance the weapon's combat qualities. Shion thought that the hero of Claire's weapon was undoubtedly a very capable hero.